DestinationMarc.
Hey guys, how's it going? Marcelo here. Welcome to the next episode of the Bandicast. It's here, and we've got another returning guest. He is back. It's JumpButton. Hello.
Hey, it's me again. 3 years on, and it's definitely the first attempt.
And one attempt later.
One attempt later.
So funny. How you doing? First try.
I'm doing all right. I have anxiety about doing PAX West with Summit Sphere because I have never flown before, and it's very dumb how I have to get there. I have a really dumb connection, and I fly for hours before I'm even out of my own time zone, but we'll get through it. We'll be all right.
Nice.
Turn that off. Please turn off your cellular devices before beginning the podcast.
We're leaving that in. I don't even care, dude. That's hilarious.
Yeah, I should have put it in airplane mode for the gag, right?
Yeah.
Since we're talking about airplanes.
Planes, trains, and automobiles.
Just pretend that's what I did.
Yeah.
Pretend that's what I said, and then laugh at it. Haha. Got him.
So for this episode, we are going to talk a little bit about Crash 4, since you didn't have much of a chance. I mean, your episode was before Crash 4 came out, so definitely want to hear your thoughts again on that, and then we'll just go right into Rumble afterward.
I started to say the world ended, and then we didn't get to come back to it, but then I remembered that the world had already started ending before we did that. We were already knee deep in pandemic before that all happened.
Yep.
That's another thing. I really wish the new vaccine was coming out in September before I went to PAX West, and not in September after I went to PAX West. But I guess that's how the dice falls. But yeah, Crash 4. What a doozy! What a big boy game! What a large title. Maybe to some people's point, maybe too large. But I guess that's where I differ from people. Is to me, it being a big 60-hour game full of I don't really like to call it padding, but some of it does feel kind of padded. But when I was playing it the first time, and I didn't get to 106%. And let me tell you the secret to why I didn't get to 106%. When I stopped enjoying myself, I stopped playing the game and didn't blame the game for me forcing myself to do parts of it that I thought I wouldn't get something out of. And that's not to say that you can't, criticize the game for having those things that you don't like, but I don't know. It's I think the critical analysis of it can stop at, I think the game would have been better if I didn't have 6 inverted gems to go get. Or if I didn't... But see, here's the kicker, is the part I didn't do was the time trials. Which I never do. Ever. Because I don't like time trials.
Same.
So if I say I don't like the time trials in Crash 4, I can't hold it against Crash 4 any more than I don't hold it against Warped, Insane Trilogy, Crash Team Racing, Crash Nitro Kart, yada 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 yada, etc., etc., etc. Because, I didn't like it there either. So what I did do was I got to 100%, and that's the other thing I like about Crash 4, is the amount of crap they threw in there lets you get to 100% a few different ways. I could have just avoided inverted mode entirely and just done the time trials instead if I had wanted to, and still been able to get 100%.
Mm-hmm.
So what I did was I just got all the gems. I got all the gems and all the costumes and crap. And so, my 100% journey was pretty clean. I didn't really do anything that I hated. And the stuff, the insanely perfect stuff, which is another thing you don't have to do. I think I did a few of those. I did the one for Cortex Castle, immediately after the game was done. I went and did that. I posted it to YouTube, immediately after the game came out. I was like, "Look, I did it." And I never really had trouble with that level either. Honestly, it was kind of oversold to me up front. I kept hearing people in my DMs being like, "Oh, the last level, man, it's crazy.
Yeah.
I got 100. I got 150 deaths on it. It's nuts." And then I had 20 or 30, which sounds still a lot, but when you're talking about a game like this, it's not a lot.
Yeah.
So I was like, yeah, that was pretty hard. It wasn't as hard as I was led to believe.
It was tough.
So it was almost like it was almost like a letdown where I was like,
"Don't be harder, man."
People were like, "It's gonna kick your ass," and then I was like, "Yeah, it just kind of slapped me a little bit. It didn't really kick my whole ass.
My ass was thoroughly not kicked. It was slightly bruised, if anything.
Yeah, I can still sit down fine. But so I don't know. A lot of the common complaints with Crash 4, I kind of agree with. The levels are a little bit long, but a lot of them are also things that people asked for. I think that's something that is getting kind of lost in the weeds a little bit. Is that before Crash 4 came out, there's a big thing was people are and not just before Crash 4, over the years as Crash fans are "Oh, I wish the game was longer for story mode, and I wish there were bigger levels, and I wish that the bosses were crazier, and this and this and this," and they kind of did all those things, and then people were like, "No, not like that."
Yeah.
Which is just, but that's kind of the thing. Sometimes it's you work in game development, and you get a lot of feedback. You kind of learn that for yourself. Audiences tend to be like, "I want this," and then they get this, and they're like, "This sucks." And I'm like, "Yeah, I tried to tell you," And whereas with me, I always wanted longer levels and stuff, and I enjoyed getting them. Partially because I don't do time trial anyways, so one of the bigger reasons people complain about it is "Oh, I hate doing time trial on these 4-minute levels," and I'm like, I didn't do it, so I don't care.
Yeah.
But so I still think the bosses have a ways to go. I don't think anybody's ever done a truly amazing boss fight in a Crash game yet. Still. I think the Entropy and the Entropy boss fight, as far as spectacle and cinematicism, is great.
Yeah.
And then you crack them both over the head once and they're dead. So I believe I follow the designer who put the ideas for that together on Twitter, and they had mentioned at one point that there was going to be more to it.
Yeah, that's what I heard too.
Yeah, I wish they had gotten to do everything. It feels like it's set up for you to do it kind of feels like it's set up to be like the Evil Twins, where you have to play as everybody in a row.
Yeah.
Like it was going to be a team up fight, but then it just doesn't happen that way.
I'd love to see that again.
Yeah, it's still the most story-driven boss fight in the series, I think.
For sure,
it's fair to say.
Yeah.
Even Titans and Mind Over Mutant were kind of just okay, fight them.
Yeah. Especially fucking Uka Uka. Oh, jeez.
Yeah. that this is kind of a tangent, but my favorite Twitter interaction ever is when they showed the Uka Uka boss fight for Crash on the Run, and I tweeted at them. I was like, you know, every other boss fight with Uka Uka tries to stick him on some giant body and tries to go crazy, and in this one he just does regular ass Mojo stuff. He just shoots lasers and throws fireballs, and it just works. And they responded and they were like, I don't think Uka Uka would like calling it regular ass Mojo, but thanks or something like that.
Do you think it felt more like Crash 3, where it's just raw him like versus Aku, but now like you're facing him on the run, but it feels more natural?
Yeah, I do. I think that's something that when you do an Uka Uka boss fight, there has to be a part where he's just him, because he's he's the thing. Like, he's the thing with magic, evil, laser powers and stuff. Like, giving him a physical body doesn't necessarily add anything to him, unless it was like, sticking the Uka Uka mask on like a Cortex robot or something.
Yeah.
Or like missiles and shit. He can already do all of that himself. So you kind of like, it would have to... We can sit around and theorize about that all day. But so as far as Crash 4, I have the same cons as everybody else, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Uh-huh. They just hit me less hard than they seem to have hit some other people.
That makes sense.
Like I've seen people that like have 4 complete save files be like, I hate Crash 4. Crash 4 is bad. Toys for Bob is bad. They don't get Crash and all this. And I'm like, why you play it so much then?
Yeah,
why you talk about it so much?
They over romanticize it. That's what it is. They just like to.
I'm at the point where I think I understand that the internet has bred a certain type of cynicism where even where people like things and they are like devoted to things, we're at the point where people are going to find more negatives to complain about than they're going to find positives to brag about. And I think that that's just what fandom has largely become for everything.
Yeah.
Like, I hate being a Kingdom Hearts fan because, like, it's kind of the same shtick, really. I play the game, I understand the story, I, like, read all the deep lore reports and hidden stuff, and I'm like, yes, it's complicated and it can be hard to follow, but it does all make sense and it lines up, and, like, half of the things that people think are retcons in Kingdom Hearts are just the characters being wrong, which is like, I guess it's a hard concept for people to grasp, is that like characters in universes can be wrong. Like it's like in real life, science is often wrong before it's right, and that happens in Kingdom Hearts. Like they have a whole thing where they're like, oh, nobodies don't have hearts, and like people took that as gospel. despite the fact that the character who determines that is shown in the first game in the reports to be an idiot. Right?
Cool.
Like, I don't know how much you know about Kingdom Hearts, but that, like, the guy's name is Ansem the Wise, and he's not. He is wrong constantly. But people are like, oh, they keep retconning stuff. They keep changing the rules of the universe. I'm like, they don't. The game starts off with him thinking one thing, and at the end, he thinks another. If you read the text they put on the screen, you will understand, I promise. But like, even among Kingdom Hearts fandom, like, you just see constant self-deprecating memes where it's like, oh, like, it'll be like, blah 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 fans when they're in a my game story doesn't make sense contest and their opponent is Kingdom Hearts, and I'm like, come on, folks, It's, I don't know if maybe it's just me. I have a tendency to fall into liking games and movies and stuff that have cynical fans. Like, I wish more fan bases were like Sonic fan bases. Like the Sonic fan base, like the actual Sonic fan base, not like the casual Sonic fan base that's like, I only want Sonic Mania. But the majority of the Sonic fan base, they're like, the outside people are like, what the fuck is Infinite? That's so cringe. But then the Sonic fan base, the next Sonic game, like, mentions the bad guy from the worst Sonic game of all time, and people are like, yeah! Like, they pop off. They're like, Infinite's back! They mentioned Infinite! And like, I'm like, yeah, excited about things and happy. I wish Crash fans were like this. I wish Kingdom Hearts fans were like this. You know, I wish Marvel fans were like this.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. Maybe it's, like I said, maybe it's me. I attract that kind of person, I guess.
I don't know, because, well, sometimes I feel like I'm too either impressionable or, like, just positive, because, I mean, I'm like that for stuff when Crash things make it in, like, I mean, just recently with the new comic and how they reference Mojo, I know you popped off, you're like, oh, hey, they reference Mojo.
Yeah.
That's always cool to see Titans get some representation, and all the things that On the Run did and Nitrofield did, I'm like, oh my god. Because when you're a longtime fan, you recognize that shit. And as someone who is as neutral with their opinions on things as I am, I suppose I have to be neutral to positive. And it's not like I'm trying to, because I know there's such a thing as being too overly positive and just being like, well, no, there is nothing wrong. Like, no, I do know that, you know, there are flaws and everything, obviously. But with Crash, I just tend to perceive it more as like, okay, cool, like, I'm here for it. Let's see what happens, or where this game goes, or what this character is going to do next, or whatever. Like, I'm just here for it, I guess.
Yeah, and the people who are toxically negative, when you get tired of them being toxically negative, they default to, oh, you just like everything. Oh, you don't see flaws and stuff. You're not critical. You don't analyze. And I'm like, I do. I have plenty I don't like about things. Like, there's not a Crash game in the world that I find perfect. It's just that, like, I don't default to going, oh, this is shit.
Yeah.
The Mojo thing in the comic the other day, or yesterday, I already lost track of time. The Mojo thing, like, every time they reinforce that the voodoo science combo stuff is Mojo, to me, it's world building, right? It's a good thing to do. It solidifies a rule of the Crash universe and adds a layer of consistency to the entire series. That's why, you know, before they put the game out, Crash 4, they were like, oh, nothing's retconned, it's all canon, it may be in alternate timelines and stuff. And then I always immediately suspected that was kind of bullshit. Like, I don't know why. Because they were going out of their way in the marketing to make you think that they did just start from Crash 4 and it was going to be like a new timeline and whatever. But, you know, they were talking about, you know, technically this is the 8th game in the line, and they were like little things that kind of hinted like, okay, you know, and they went out of their way to, like, clarify, we didn't get rid of anything.
Yeah.
So, you know, I was a little suspicious. I tweeted something like, I don't think, until the credits roll on the game, I don't buy anything they say about timelines or continuity. And Paul Yan liked the tweet. So I was like, alright, okay. Alright, okay. And so, you know, then the game comes out, and I was talking about this with another friend the other day. I did a little podcast with him that was just about Crash continuity. I was talking about this with him. It comes out, it doesn't do anything to erase anything. It just slots itself in the middle. And there's even like, and this is kind of waffly because there's Easter eggs in Crash 4 that are obviously just bullshit they threw in to be Easter eggs.
Yeah.
Like fucking a picture of Crash Team racing in Oxide's fucking bedroom, even though he's not a racer yet and hasn't gone to Earth yet.
Yeah.
But then there's other stuff like there are plans in Cortex's lab for Scorporilla that you can find.
Yeah, I remember.
And
that.
and there's obviously pictures of Crunch in the flashback tapes. So you know, kind of hinting that Cortex has always had like this idea for like a bigger Bandicoot general. And there's, you know, the elementals are hidden in one of the levels. And one of the things people say is, oh, the elementals are in the Agapus dimension. So that dimension must be where Wrath of Cortex happens. And I'm kind of like, well, the quantum masks are without dimension. They exist. They're the only quantum masks.
Yeah.
So to me, it makes sense that the elementals are the only elementals. And Aku, and Uka, Uka are like, you know, like the Mojo masks kind of like exist agnostic of dimension or whatever. So like the elementals could have come from there and come to this dimension or whatever. Who knows? But there's not a lot of stuff in Crash 4 that goes out of its way to be like, nothing happens after this.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of things that go, all of that other stuff that happens after this still happens. Not the least of which being like the secret ending epilogue having all of the stuff that comes after this. Like, and as I was talking about with him, you know, it's kind of like Crash 1, where some of that epilogue is, you know, probably real story, and then some of the epilogue is, you know, Engine goes and makes a jazz album, right? So, like, some of it's a goof, some of it's probably stuff that you can glean about where the story goes between 4 and the other games coming after this in its chronological timeline.
Yeah.
And that's, you see what I did there at the end? I said exactly what Paul Yan said in the GDC talk. Like, verbatim. Because, you know, that's what he said. So that's not me saying, oh, the other games come after this in the same chronological timeline. That's the fucking chief creative officer, people. That's not me. I'm not being a smartass, but I'm being a little bit of a smartass. Like, I ought to do what I did for him. I should send you the clip and you edit the audio in right here.
Yes. From the GDC talk, I have that. Just point to me where he says it.
Oh, I'll send it right to you. We'll stick it in here just to make a point.
Like this joke that's kind of acknowledging the fact that it's ignoring some of the other sequels that are coming after this in its chronological timeline.
So yeah, that was like my big worry ahead of Crash 4. I was like, oh my god, did they really do it? Did they get rid of everything? Did they fucking split up the timelines? Did they do all this and that and that and that? And then they really didn't. And now Rumble with the comics is kind of like reinforcing that, and it's kind of, you know, making everything kind of like timeline agnostic for Rumble.
Yeah,
I feel like Rumble can just kind of float at the end forever. Like it's just always like something that happens at the end, because if it keeps going and say other single player Crash games come out, they can add stuff from those games into Rumble, and Rumble can just always be like its own floating thing that like just is always after whatever else has already happened. So that because they've made a point that like the Wumpa Harvest happens every year, so there's an excuse for it to be around kind of permanently, right?
Yeah.
And that's a good example of like the Crash 1 epilogue having something that made it into canon, even though it doesn't line up with what they say in the epilogue itself per se.
Yeah.
Is
Ripperoo.
Ripperoo. Like Crash 2 is 1 year after Crash 1, but Ripperoo apparently did go off and get that 7-year degree.
Yeah.
So you know, I think one thing they could do going forward with Crash that I think would be a good thing to do is just lay out what happened from game to game to game to game, clarify it's all one universe, one timeline, because I think that multiversal stuff, like even Marvel, is kind of like suffering from it a little bit, right? Like people latched onto the Marvel stuff because it had a degree of familiarity, and you were following this story that evolved across a universe with the same characters kind of like interacting. Sometimes you wouldn't see like Captain America, but you always knew he was off in the background doing something.
Mm-hmm.
I think Crash has always kind of been like that. And now people are like, oh, it's the Titans universe and the Wrath universe. And like the one theory I really don't like is like, oh, the different endings of Crash Warped lead to different timelines. I'm like, no, they don't, because they lead to each other.
They lead to each.
They lead to each other.
Yeah.
Like Crash
like
Warped,
literally.
the any percent ending. He's like, there are still the gems. Like, it's not a different ending. It's just they didn't get everything. Let's go get the rest.
Yeah.
So that one never worked for me. So I honestly, what people liked about like the MCU and what they like about things like I hate to give the author of these books any attention, obviously, but the Harry Potter movies, the people like long form storytelling that has like that acknowledges the fact that you've played all the games, you've watched all the movies, and that doesn't mean that every Crash game needs to be like last time on Crash Bandicoot, But you don't necessarily need to have played like Titans and Mind of a Mutant are direct sequels, but you don't need to have played Titans to understand Mind of a Mutant. Twinsanity is a direct sequel to Wrath of Cortex. You don't need to have played Wrath of Cortex to understand it.
Yeah.
Crash 1, 2, and 3 are direct sequels to each other, but you don't need to play any of them to understand the next one because they tell you what happened.
Yeah.
And Titans mentions Twinsanity happening. And, like, that's always my favorite one. People are like, oh, Titans is a reboot. And I'm like, huh, that's weird, because they talk about Twinsanity happening.
Yep.
And they like say it by name.
They do.
Like
they really do.
They literally say.
It's my favorite reference.
Oh, yeah, mine too. Because it's like the voodoo rabbit being like, his plan is to give himself a body again. He had a body in Twinsanity, and that wasn't good for any body. And I'm yeah. Like they literally are like, he's tried this before. Like not long ago,
yeah,
and people are like, "It's a reboot,"
because they looked and their soul they predicated on the fact that they look different, basically, and
the shadow puppet thing. I guess people like the shadow puppet movie shows Crash being evolved with a handheld laser instead of the Evolvo Ray, and Nina's there, and I'm like, it's like I told my friend on that other podcast. It's like. I think that's just meant to be like an abridged catch-up thing. I don't think it means anything.
Yeah.
Because, in the game, Uka Uka talks about the Evolvo Ray. They used the Evolvo Ray.
Yep.
Like, it's there.
Yeah, I think it's meant to be
the lead. Yeah. So, my point is, Rumble now going out of its way to kind of like clarify, like, oh, everything's connected, is good, because when everything's connected, you can draw from all of it.
Yeah.
Like people are always like, oh, they should reintroduce Crunch and Nina. I'm like, or we can just use the 20 years of Nina existing and the 20 years of Nina lore to have Nina be Nina, and we don't need to have a Nina origin story that overrides her old one. When you know damn well it would probably be the same origin, just slightly different.
Yeah.
Like they don't need to say, oh, Cortex made Crunch after he was trapped on the Time Beach, and now there's Crunch, but it's not Crunch from the old timeline. No, it's just Crunch. Like he made Crunch in Wrath of Cortex. It just works better for everything if you can draw from all that.
Yeah.
Because it just, and it's like I keep pointing to the Sonic example, but like. Frontiers popped off a lot because they have little incidental shit like Sonic being like, Whoa, hey, look, this cliff reminds me of whatever place where I was racing on the surfboard things with Jet the Hawk. And
Like a Family Guy cutaway gag.
Yeah, like they just having little throwaway lines like, "Oh, I wonder what like, oh, this reminds me when I had to fight Mephiles." like 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 you don't have, like, just because all that stuff still exists and happened and built the world up doesn't mean we have to talk about it all the time, but acknowledging that it happens and that the universe is big and rich and full helps tell the story. It helps make it feel more immersive and more interconnected, and that's why I like, other than stuff like Crash of the Titans Game Boy Advance, where like it's the exact same story told slightly differently, that I'm fine if people are like, oh, that's an alternate timeline, because it's an alternate timeline to Crash of the Titans itself. It's like an alternate version of that. But otherwise, if it came out on like a main console, a main handheld, or it had a story at all, like Mutant Island on the Java phones in 2009, that's set between Titans and Mind Over Mutant, and that's an intentional thing that they said in interviews. Oh, it's set between the two console games. So you know what? Cool. Fine by me. It's canon. Like, anything that came out on the main shit, had a story, is canon. And I've even drawn out the timeline. People are like, oh, you can't make sense of the timeline. Like, some of the stuff doesn't make sense. I'm like, well, it does if you just accept that characters aren't always around. Like, Pinstripe isn't in Crash 4, for instance.
Yeah.
But there's a wanted poster for him. So he's clearly doing shit, right? He's off doing his thing. And I've had this conversation twice in the last couple of weeks, but Pinstripe, he's not around. What can you assume he's doing? Mob shit. He's doing crimes. It's what he does. It's like when like, people want to make plot holes where there aren't. Like Crash Huge Adventure, people are like, how can this connect to this and this? Because Crunch isn't there, and this. And I'm like, Crunch was busy. He was off doing his thing. Like, people, like, he's in Twinsanity for 4 seconds, and we accept that Twinsanity is like, why didn't Crunch help Crash and Cortex? Why didn't Crunch help? You know, because he was busy. He's doing his own thing. Polar came to the party. Why didn't he use that bat to help? It doesn't make sense. I'm like, the characters have lives, and like it's object permanence, right? Just because they're not on the screen doesn't mean they don't exist.
Yeah.
So I just, the game, like, I won't. If people want to hear my fucking Crash timeline, they can go on my Twitter and they can find that podcast I did with Tom, and because I list out the order of the games that I put the games in. But basically, the Game Boy games just kind of come after Twinsanity, and it makes perfect sense, and nothing conflicts, and it just. That's the nice thing, is that a lot of the Crash games are kind of episodic. They flow into each other, but into their own arcs, so you can just move the arcs around instead of moving individual games around. And and people are just busy. The other thing people like to bring up is like, where'd all the mutants come from? Who created these anthros? I'm like, my brother in Christ, there are 2 or 3 guys who have Evolvo rays, and it's been said. And so far, every mutant with an origin comes from them. I'm going to go out on a limb and say probably them. Like Crash of the Titans, the story of Crash of the Titans is Cortex literally makes like 5,000 new guys.
Yeah.
I think it's safe to assume if there's an animal that has been genetically enhanced in the Crash Bandicoot universe, it was the Evolvo Ray that did it. And Brio probably has his own. That's the thing that I feel like Crash fans, when they talk about lore and stuff, lack is an ability to accept and like play with nuance. Like, if it's not spelled out for them, they can't just imagine it. And not that I'm saying you should come up with your own headcanons and enforce them as canon on everybody, but I'm saying stuff like, we know Embryo has made some of his own mutants to try and attack Cortex.
Yeah.
We know that Von Clutch is a giant Cortex fanboy who has all of this money and science in his theme park. Maybe he made his own Evolvo Ray. Maybe he mutated his own staff to work at his theme park. You know, like, there's possibilities like that. It's just like the game, like, and even if you don't like that, you can just say that they came from Cortex, because the guy apparently mutates animals left and right and forgets about them. Like, they just introduced a new character that's been there the whole time, just hanging out.
Yep.
Living in the city. Catbat.
Yep.
Came from Cortex. Was evolved during Crash 1 and 2 by the looks of where the comic takes place. Because they talk about evolving Tiny in the comic.
Uh-huh.
So, like, Catbat's been around the whole time. And they weren't in any of the games. And that's fine, because, yes, technically it's retroactive continuity, but it goes to my point that, like, just because we don't see where a character comes from doesn't mean that we can't, like, logically jump to the conclusion, oh, the evolved animal? Evolvo Ray.
Yeah.
Like, especially when we're at the point where there are literally thousands of mutated animals in this series now. Like, once Titans happened, like, and he was mass producing these motherfuckers, I think we were okay to just be like, huh, probably Cortex.
Yeah.
He probably did it.
It was him.
Yeah. Yeah, so Crash 4, they didn't do anything stupid with continuity, and now with Rumble they're kind of clarifying and unifying even further, which I think is the best thing they can do. Like, Ripperoo and Engine, for example, have never really interacted, but now we get to see them do stuff together.
Yeah.
That's why everything should be unified. It should all be one timeline, because then you have Rumble being able to play with it. And
Exactly.
things like Nitro Fuel being able to play with it.
I love what they do with Nitro Field, because that's arguably where it started, and I feel that Beanox's choice to do that was a great decision, because A, it shows that no, they're not afraid to acknowledge everything when the fans themselves won't, and B, it allows, just that growth and these interactions you've never thought were possible, and character comebacks you never thought were possible, and no one even asked for it. We didn't even expect that was how far they were going to take it. And just seeing how fine they all were with bringing all of it in. And, so they wouldn't have to reintroduce characters like you were saying. The fact that Nitrofield didn't even do that. The only character they even attempted to explain away, and it was something of a retcon, kind of, was Megamix, I guess. Because they said that, he was the product of like a toxic waste spill or some shit, and that's not how that went down originally, but it's like, whatever. Who cares?
Well, see, that's what I was talking about with Tom about Megamix. I think it's meant to be a different Megamix.
It could be. I mean,
like,
yeah.
they kind of, like, we were talking about, the Grand Prix kind of need to happen later than Crash Team Racing itself happens, because all the characters are there.
Yeah.
But there is story, right? So we have them kind of towards the end of the, like, after Mind Over Mutant and stuff, because everyone is here. But we just resolved that, it's showing like a post-apocalyptic future. You can say that it's, it happens in the future.
Yeah.
And the mega mix that happens there, falls in some toxic waste and gets mixed together. It's the Doofenshmirtz joke. Cortex is like, if I had a nickel for every time I've been mixed together with Tiny and Engine, I wouldn't have many. I'd only have two, but crazy that it's happened twice. So it's it's interesting. But to the point is that you were saying, it's like they didn't have to go, oh, Pasadena and Von Clutch are here from the non-canon racing universe, and
like, who are they?
And this is the alternate universe Crunch skin. No, they just said this is the evil Crunch skin, because people don't need to be babied.
Yeah.
Like, they know, like, oh, this must be from a game I didn't play. That's cool. I should look into it. And then, like, that's the other thing that benefits from a connected universe, is when you start referencing stuff from those old things, people go and look for them.
Yeah, it encourages them to actually go in and see what they missed.
And engage with the stuff. Yeah, like I said, engage with the stuff that they haven't done yet.
Yeah.
And just... So, to wrap this back around to Crash 4, they didn't do anything dumb with continuity, which I enjoyed. I thought the story itself was pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
It stumbles a bit. You can really tell that there were some, like, maybe higher ambitions for it, and a couple of places feel like there are some cuts and adjustments.
Yeah.
The art book kind of like has some stuff that shows that maybe some of the story beats were kind of waffled on.
Mm-hmm.
Like the Cortex hologram in the art book, the one that comes from present day, is really old. So it's like it kind of tells me at one point maybe they did think about having it be like present day, like having the game literally just really be a retcon. But it's the only instance of that old Cortex that you see.
Uh-huh.
And it comes across a little weird because the meta is that, for us it's been 24, 23, 24. It had been 22 years since Warped when Crash 4 came out.
Uh-huh.
So like to us in 2023, it's like, oh yeah, we're going back to 1996. Oh, it's crazy. But in the universe, it's only been 2 years.
Yeah.
So it's kind of weird that like Cortex is like, oh, did I really used to be that annoying? And I'm like,
and that just makes it feel to me like they were going to try to get Clancy Brown to do past Cortex. They were going to probably model a past Cortex head or body, even like a full 3D model of PS1 era, like HDified for now, so it's not polygonal unless they wanted to do that. But like an actual older Naughty Dog era Cortex. That's what it read like to me when they kept saying shit like, yeah, that I used to be that annoying. Was that my voice? Like, what do you mean? In the way that we have it now in the final game, dude, that's just Lex Lang. Like, that's just you. What do you mean? That's what I looked like. That's what I sounded like. Like, those remnants are there, but they're both the same.
So like, there's a part of me that does think that like, oh, at one point they may have genuinely just thought about starting fresh, and then they kind of realize. I don't know anything. I'm just gonna speculate here.
Yeah.
I kind of think because that game has been in development, or had been in development since before Nitro Fueled came out. And I feel like Nitro Fueled came out, and everybody was like, "Wow, all of the sequels are kind of cool." And Toys for Bob was kind of like, "Oh, fuck," and like just kind of had to be like, "Nope, no reboot here." And there's maybe a little bit of sloppiness with kind of ripping some of that out. But at the same time, it does like I think maybe it's just kind of sloppy because it's meta, where like it's been a long time for us, but it hasn't been a long time for them, and they try to toe the line with the dialogue of like, it feels long for us even though it's not long for them, because otherwise the flashback tapes don't make sense on their face, because like Crash and Coco are like would have to be like 30
yeah.
for in the main game for the flashback tapes to like make any sense, because they're already clearly like somewhat grown up in the flashback tapes. Like,
yeah,
Coco's like already a tween, and Crash is like Crash. So like if the flashback tapes were 22 years ago, they are now like full ass middle age adults. And I don't think that was the intent. But so the story is a little sloppy here and there. I love all the character interactions because like that's the other thing they do that I kind of feel like they kind of indicates maybe more that they were kind of trying to unify stuff and set people up, is that like Embryo is written in a way that really, really gets him where he needs to be for the later games. Dingo Dial is written in a way that really gets him where he needs to be for the later games. Yeah. And the running theme for all the bad guys is that like none of them really trust Cortex anymore.
Yeah. And
that's kind of where we end up in Wrath and in Twinsanity.
Especially
and
Twinsanity.
Mutant.
Yeah.
and especially in Titans, because they literally fire him.
Yep.
But like, is that nobody's intimidated by him. Nobody's scared of him anymore, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it kind of sets up, Dingo Dial's trying to do his own stuff, and in Twinsanity he lives in a shack, and he's not really and Brio and Tropy are always trying to fuck Cortex over. Like, in Wrath of Cortex, like that little thing where Tropy is trying to throw Cortex under the bus and like spoil his secret plan to Uka Uka.
Yeah.
It's way funnier if you have Crash 4 as context, where they're like, they don't like each other. They both want to be the guy. But the funniest thing for me, I mentioned this in that other video with my friend, is it always struck me as a kid as weird that Entropy just did not give a fuck about what was happening in Crash Team Racing. And obviously this was not something that they planned back then, but you can retrofit it to make sense now.
Uh-huh.
It was always weird that he was just like, I don't care, I'm setting best times. Like, he's not worried about the alien invasion. We now know that he's not worried about the alien invasion because he's like, oh, it's that guy? Yeah. He's like, everyone else is like, oh, Oxide's really good at racing. He's gonna, like, the Oxide, like, all they did was they heard him on a loudspeaker. They saw him like once, but Tropy knows him. Tropy has clearly been pushing that guy around for a long time. So it's really funny to think that in Crash Team Racing, everyone's worried about Oxide paving the world over, and fucking Tropy's just over there like, yeah, I'm gonna have a good weekend, setting personal bests. I'm gonna have a laugh. And then for the rest of the series, he's kind of like that. He's just kind of like done with everything. He's like, oh, I'm gonna go get some treasure.
Yeah.
He's like making fun of Cortex all the time, and it works because Crash 4 is like his humiliation point. And granted, he gets to try again in Entranced, but which by the way, he knows Entranced through Oxide, as we see that Oxide's whole racing network extends out to Velo and Trance and all these alien planets. And this is why I will keep banging that drum. It's just cooler if everything's connected like that. But like, Tropy gets to try again in Entranced, but he's like a big fuck up there too. He like pulls the wrong crash through the portal.
Yeah.
He like does like there's just all the characterizations in the later games are a lot funnier if 4 is there, because 4 kind of sets up those dominoes to fall, where everything just kind of goes to shit in 4 and nobody knows what they're doing from there on. But yeah, like I said, the story is kind of a little sloppy, and I think that probably comes down to cuts and changes. But overall, like, as a game, Crash 4, I think, like, moment to moment, any percent is like probably my favorite of the Crash platforming games. The bosses, I said earlier, are like still not quite there for me as far as being like amazing, but they're some of the best in the series. I don't like the embryo one. But
that seems to be the general consensus.
That's probably the only one that I don't really like.
It's very safe.
Yeah. I do hate that the last couple of hits in the Cortex final boss like all come very quick succession. So like when you start the fight and he has that long health bar, you're like, oh cool, but then they like just burn off the last few hits really quick.
Yeah.
I generally just hate when games do that in general. Like especially if they do the last hit for you.
Oh yeah.
Like the only example I can think of right now is Papu in Crash Bash.
Oh yeah, when it falls on him. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean it's funny, but it's like it's also kind of anticlimax.
There are times when games do that, and they do it through cutscene. Like Jack and Daxter does that. When you get the white eco, you don't actually attack them with it. It happens via cutscene, and then you defeat them.
Sonic Frontiers does it. Is the most recent example I can think of.
Oh, really?
They even leave the health bar on the screen. And there's like a little bit left, and when Supersonic hits the last hit in the cutscene, the health bar goes down.
That's funny.
So those are kind of anticlimaxes, but the game itself is really good. Like, I wouldn't have ground 60 hours into beating everything and getting all the gems and stuff like that in the first week it was out if I didn't like it.
Yeah.
I've played it through several times since then. Sometimes I load it up just to play Cortex Castle and see if I can beat it in one try. About every 7 out of 10 times I can beat it in one go, which is crazy. But it speaks to how well the game feel is designed. Because once you're good at it, you just kind of stay good at it. It's like riding a bike.
Yeah.
Which means it's very well designed. And I know there's a lot of people who just bitch and moan and be like, it's not well designed, it's fucking too hard, it's overly complicated, it throws too much at you. And I'm like, it's fine to just not be good at it and not have that be the game's fault.
Hey, but also guess what? Guess what it does? It falls back, like many other things about it, many other aspects about it do. It kind of falls back on the Crash 1 thing of timing. You just got to learn the patterns and learn the timing. It's been a while since a Crash platforming game has done that to that degree.
Yeah. And the other thing is, it's like kind of like I said earlier about level length. People have always been asking the games to be, more substantial and harder. And then they get that, and they're like, wait, I was wrong.
Yeah. It's too hard. Yeah. Go back.
So, Crash 4, good.
Crash 4 is good.
I'll open myself to taking arrows now.
Well, one of the things you were saying earlier near the beginning about how almost kind of bloated everything is with how much... Because it all goes towards percentage, and that's the one thing I highlighted in my my quick reviews video. I definitely think that I still subscribe to the idea that some of those things... They could be there, that's fine. Shouldn't have gone all towards percentage. Some of that shit should have gone towards extra goodies. Watch all the cinematics again or some shit. I forget if that's even in there. It probably is.
I don't think so, actually.
That should have been there then. I know you unlock the concept art, but like they don't even tell you unlock it unless it's something I never kept track of. But that should have went to like really cool concept art that like isn't even in the art book or whatever. They should go towards like really like rare skins or something. Like, I don't know, anything but percentage when it's all funneling into that and they're asking everything of you to go there. Like, all of it has to go there. Especially if you want to get, mainly to 106%. They want all of it. And that's where...
That's the other thing.
It's a little weird.
That's the other thing I would have done. I would have flipped the endings.
Oh, for sure, yes. Absolutely.
The 106% ending is like the post-credit scene. Like, that should have just been at 100%.
Yeah.
Like... actually, what I would have done is I would have just made that the post-credit scene.
Oh,
and then made and then kept the epilogue at 100%, and then 106% is just bragging rights.
Yeah.
And
an extra cinematic, like in Twinsanity, an extra cinematic or something silly.
Yeah,
maybe.
And just take some of the stuff off the percent. Inverted mode should have just had like a gem for completing the inverted stage, and then not any of the extra gems.
Yeah,
like it didn't need all 6 gems in the inverted mode, and it definitely didn't need the hidden gem to be hidden somewhere different.
And some are bullshit in some of them. Some of them are stupidly hard to find without like a guide or something.
I'll go to the ends of the earth to say that like the crates I think are fine. Because they teach you in the first couple of levels all the ways they're going to hide crates, and then they never break those rules. Some of the hidden gems...
Oh, they're fucked.
I don't know how you would find it.
Most bullshit one for you, go. Which one would it be?
Crash Landed. The one where you have to... Ika up into the ceiling.
Yeah, there's that one. For inverted for me, That would be probably Dino Dash, because how the fuck do you know it's in that little crevice off to the side? There's no shimmer. There's no light coming out from that. Like there's an opening. There is absolutely that one, and I want to say it's no dilly-dallying. I think it's that one. Yeah, because right when you come out of that segment, you have to come backwards. But even tiptoeing to the very, very, very edge toward the camera and then pulling the camera back, you still can't see it. It is a literal blind jump. There is no tell. There's absolutely... You can't see the shimmer coming from the bottom of the screen just out of frame. Like, no, there is absolutely no tell.
Yeah, and that's the other reason that I like it. With the crates and stuff, there often is a tell that people like ignore. Like they'll be like, "How are you supposed to know that crate's hidden up there?" Because
they trick you. They definitely trick you with perspective, or eyesight rather, like line of sight.
Yeah, I'm like, because you've been walking up to this tall structure for the whole level, and you can look at it from a distance and see the crates floating in the air. But like you said, the gems, on the other hand, a lot of the time they do that same trick with the gem, where the gem's like out of sight.
Yeah.
But if you you notice it earlier in the level from far away, but then like you said, some of the gems are just kind of stupid. And what I would have done is like if you're within like say 20 meters of a gem, you hear like some kind of like
or something, yeah.
And like maybe there's like one of those distorty, watery looking like screen effects that like waves out from it, like a shockwave every once in a while if you're near it, so you kind of know like, oh, there's one near here.
Yeah.
And then that makes it okay for them to do bullshit like sticking it in the ceiling and fucking crash landed, because if you get far away from it, you're gonna be like, oh, the sound stopped, I missed it.
Yeah.
Or oh, the little visual effect stopped, I missed it.
Yeah.
So that means they could have done crazier ones, whereas like right now, you kind of have like, I don't remember how many levels are in Crash 4, but like let's say there's 30, just as an estimate.
Uh-huh.
Right now you kind of have like 28, or like 26, 27 of the gems are kind of like hidden in really obvious places, and then there are 3 that are just fucking stupid. Whereas if they had like those hints and audio cues and stuff they could have hidden them better, and it would have still felt fair.
Yeah.
And then, like I said, insanely perfect shouldn't have been percentage boosting. Platinum relics shouldn't have been percentage boosting. It should have just been sapphire and gold. Honestly, people are going to hate me for saying this. Maybe they won't. I don't see the point in divvying up the relics anymore. Like, it's a fun thing to be like, oh, there's a first, second, and third place that you have to beat.
Yeah.
But, like, just make the first place time easier and just only have there be one. Because, like...
That makes the most sense. The way...
Because if you're doing percentage for you to get a full percent, you have to beat all of them 100% completely the fastest time perfect anyways.
Yeah.
There's no real reason to have second and third place.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would do that. I would either simplify the relics or make gold good enough.
Yeah, exactly.
Like I think what they could have done is whatever time there was for the sapphire should have been the gold time. Whatever time there was for the gold time should have been the platinum time, and the platinum times should have been the purple time.
Mm-hmm.
And then, like, but here's the problem: we're talking about like cutting things out of percentage. I don't think it would have made me feel better. It would have been sensible for me. I think a lot of the completionist people who were like really mad at Crash 4 would have still been mad. Because they would have been like, yeah, it doesn't add to my percent, but I still know it's not finished. It's like, we had somebody once played our demo back in June for Anton Blast.
Uh-huh.
And there's a really difficult section in the first level. And it's meant to be like something that you're meant to fail, because it's meant to be like a jump scare. like this big giant blimp with all of Satan's minions on it comes barreling through the building behind you and starts chasing you. And you're not meant to be able to get past it the first time. It's meant to scare you, make you fuck up, and then you fall down to like a hidden area that's like easier. But at the end of the thing, because it is doable, we put one of the vinyl records so that there'd be a reward for if you do beat it. So if you go back to the level later, there's a reward for being better at the game when you go back.
Mm-hmm.
And most people accepted that. Like, most people that play the game, they're like, "Oh, it's really hard." They like overcoming the challenge, and that's how I am with hard games. Is like I like things to be really, really hard because then when you beat them, you feel rewarded just for beating. But there's some people who really, 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 really feel, and I'm not saying this like judgmentally, but there are people who feel entitled to finish the games that they play.
Yeah.
And when they can't, they tend to blame the game and not themselves.
Yeah.
Which, in some degrees, is understandable because the game is intentionally difficult. But no matter how many times you tell people, don't do the blimp chase. Like, just fall down, finish the level, get better at it, and come back and get the vinyl later. But at some point along the line, gaming, like people who play games have decided, I have to get everything first go. And I hate when people call it OCD, because I have clinical OCD, and it's different for everybody, let me be clear. Some of these people may actually have an obsessive compulsive need to finish levels. And if they do, I sympathize. But people who just want to be able to finish everything in one go frustrate me, because I'm like, it's intentionally a segment you're not meant to finish. We're telling you you're not meant to do it on your first go. It's something for when you've played the game and gotten better at it.
Yeah.
For you to have something to do later to come back and play it again. And you're bouncing off the game because you're forcing yourself to try and beat it and restarting at checkpoint when you don't. You're adding an artificial level of tedium to the game that's not there.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we don't kill you, we don't fail you, we don't respawn you and force you to do it over and over and over. We funnel you into an easier path because we want you to keep going. So it's like when people are like, I'm gonna sit here and respawn at the checkpoint for 4 hours until I escape the blimp to get the vinyl. And I'm like, more power to you, but I think that then when you go online, you say, "Oh, the game's tedious; it's too hard." I think that's on you, and I think a lot of people do that with Crash 4, where they're like,
"Oh, for sure,"
they can't accept that, like, this is too hard for me right now, and I need to practice, and it may take me months of playing the game off and on to beat it. Like, my friend Dan took 2 years to finish Crash 4. But he played it when he had time. He didn't fucking make it a job.
Yeah.
And he eventually finished it, and it was, that's fine. Like, that should be fine. Especially if you're somebody like me who rotates the games you're playing anyways and, like, doesn't really stick to one thing for a really long time.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like if you went back and you took off the percentages and you, like, made it like, oh, you don't need the platinum relics for percentage, and you don't need the insanely perfects to get 106, and you don't need the inverted gems to get 100%, and you did like that, and you like took out some of the tedium. I think a lot of the people who complain about the quote-unquote tedium would enforce it upon themselves and be like, yeah, but I still know you don't get all the art unless you get all the gems. I still want all the art, like, and they would, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, I think for a lot of people like me and you, if you took the percent requirement off of those things, it would help people like me and you be like, oh yeah, that takes away some of the padding. It feels a little less tedious, feels more optional. But I think for a good deal of those people, they would still just be annoyed because the content is still there.
Yeah,
and it's like, thank God I'm able to like play a video game, get to optional content I don't want to do, not do it and not hate the game because I didn't get to do it. Like to go back to the Kingdom Hearts example. Kingdom Hearts 3 came out. Everybody was like, this is too easy. And I was among them. I was like, yeah, I didn't really struggle, even like in the end game. And then Nomura was like, oh, okay. And then he went and got Osaka team together, and they all sat in a room and said, how can we fuck them the worst? And then the DLC comes out, and like the storyline in the DLC, like the main story, I almost said campaign, I hate that word. The main story of the DLC was harder than the main game. But the optional shit is like some of the hardest, most well-designed fuck you action game bosses of all time. And it's solely because Nomura was like, I didn't realize people were so fond of the extreme hard optional content. But when you put that in there are some people that then feel they have to do it. And Kingdom Hearts 3 does the cardinal sin. It locks story behind them.
Oh.
I would not do that. And I think that's where, like I said, if they took the secret ending of Crash 4 and stuck that as a post-credits and then did the epilogue for 100% and then 106% just had like a goofy video or something that wasn't story, that it would have been received better. But like there's like a hard balance where people want stuff to overcome, but then they feel entitled to overcome it, and if they can't, they blame the game. And they take points off of the game. And I'm like, if stuff's optional for me, I'm completely fine with not doing it. And I don't think that like, to me, if there's something in the game that I don't want to do, but it's there and it's well done, like, I don't think anybody's gonna like be like, for Crash 4, some people are like, the inverted stages are stupid, or the time trials are bad because the triple spin or whatever. But like, they deliver well on what they're trying to do.
Yeah.
So to me, like, just because I personally don't want to do it and I don't enjoy time trials, I'm not gonna like be like, well, Crash 4 was a 9 out of 10 for me, but now it's a 6 because time trials won't let me get 106%. I don't like time trials. I don't want to do time trials, but they're there for people who do. They're a staple of the series, and by all reports, they're like an accomplishment to overcome, which is what they've always meant to be. So like, if anything, that adds points to the game for me, even though it's not for me and I personally didn't do them. So like, for me, optional content that I don't want to do does not make the game worse for me because I don't do it. But there are people out there who it will add to the game for. So, you know, the psychology of why certain people need to force themselves to do things they don't enjoy, and then it's like if I keep stabbing myself after I accidentally stab myself once, I'm like, wow, that sucked, and then I keep doing it, I'm like, I guess it's something to do, and I'm just sitting there fucking bleeding out, and I'm like, oh, this sucks. Knives are stupid.
Pretty much. It's worse too. It's worse when these people doing that are longtime Crash fans that are the exact kind of demographic that Lou Stutter was talking about, being like, yo, you're not going to finish this in a day. Like, the whole thing, it's not happening. And they warned us. It's like you were saying before. When they tell you ahead of time, this is how it's going to be, and they're specifically targeting us who have been with it for 25, 7+ years, whatever. Like, yeah. Mm-hmm. And you do feel it. I for one, felt it. I was like, they're not fucking around. Even, like, by Crash 1 standards, I fucking grew up with Crash 1. I love Crash 1. Even I'm like, Jesus Christ. So, like, if someone like me is saying Jesus Christ, maybe don't force yourself to have to, as a Crash fan, not even with this compulsive need to do it, and you're not even that big a Crash fan or whatever, but that's how you complete games. Even if you're a fucking longtime fan, You've been playing since the 90s. Yeah, no, fucking pace yourself. That is like definitely, it's trying to teach you the Crash 1 thing, and people are not getting it. And people don't like Crash 1 because of all the shit that they say is wrong with it and whatever. And it's like, dude, like, I don't know what to tell you, man. Like, for those people, because I used to see streams of people that I know are longtime fans who would not move forward until they've gotten all 6 gems and the perfect relic. And I'm like, if you keep, and whenever they die to something, whether it's a dumb death or whether they just fuck something up, but to hear them just be like, oh, fuck, I gotta do it again. It's like, first off, as content, it's not doing it for me. Like, I want to skip until you actually do it because I'm not engaged now. So as an audience member, it can be weird, but as the person doing it,
I like streams where people try to overcome a hard thing, but I like it after they've done the story.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to see you fucking stop in the middle of the story to try to get fucking insanely perfect on fucking Crash Landed. Especially, like, and it would suck the fun out of it for me. Like,
yeah.
When I first play a game like that, I want to see the story. I want to see what happens. I want to see all the levels. Like, I'm not... And people have this idea that Crash games have always been this way. You can always 100% them on your first go. No, you can't. And like Crash 2 especially goes out of its way to block you from doing that.
Yeah. To
the point that the 100% run, to do it all in one go, you have to do death abuses, and you have to do cheese, and you have to fucking...
Yeah.
Like, on the PlayStation 1 version, you have to learn this fucking weird jump so that you can get the fucking gem at the end of the snow death route without falling down. And, like... I'm like, it is clearly not meant to be one run.
Yeah.
And I'm like...
They want you to learn everything. They want you to learn the route, learn the level.
Yeah, it's revisionist... It's revisionist history to say that Crash games have always been able to be one run.
Yeah.
Because they're not. And, like... Especially Crash 2, like I said, like goes out of its way. It's a lock and key system. Like, some levels you can't even do until you take an alternate route out of another level without beating it. Like, so it's crazy to me that people like.
Only
I don't know, man.
I mean, because I did Road to Rumble. I don't know if you've ever I don't think you were in any of those streams, but if you end up going back and watching those streams back, yeah, we beat each game in one day per stream. But like, when it came to Crash 1 and 2 specifically, yes, I 100%ed only those ones on stream. But how we're talking about Crash 2 as a very specific example, even then, when you know, yeah, certain cheese bits, it's still, that's experience. That's not, oh, let me just try and brute force my way through to completion. No, that's learning the tricks, watching other people do it from back in the day on YouTube, looking up cheat codes or whatever, even because sometimes they'll be like, hey, get the thing early. Oh, if you time it just right. Shit like that. It's experience. It's not this innate sense of, oh, I can do it. Like, fuck the rules, I can do it. Like, no, you can't.
And Crash 4 is designed like those old-style platformers that people try to play against its sensibilities, and that's one of the reasons they bounce off of it. But yeah, I mean, that pretty much wraps up my thoughts on Crash 4. Like, I think it's one of the best Crash games.
It's very
in
solid.
A lot of ways.
Mm-hmm.
But I think there's a little bit of sloppiness in places that kind of prevents it from being perfect, obviously. But like, the first time going through it, the first time going through it, I didn't want it to end, and that's always a good sign. Like, when you start when you know you're getting to the end of a game and you start dreading that you're at the end of the game, it's a good sign every time. Yeah, that's pretty much all I got to say about Crash 4, I guess.
Crash 4, it's solid. I still love it. I think it's a very, very. It's a very experimental game in a way, because not only does it do a lot of safe stuff, but it tries to, like, hey, let's reintroduce Tana back into canon and give her stuff to do, and she's different now. Or, like, let's do, let's take the characters this way. Let's kind of reference this that we haven't seen in a while, or whatever. And, like, it was just solid. It's solid. I really enjoy it.
Yeah. I guess that's the other thing that, like, people always point to, by the way, about canon is like, well, if this is a midquel, where are the alternate Tana and the alternate entropy in the other games? Like back in their universe.
Yeah, not here.
The whole game, the whole point of the game is we need to close that back up and stick everything back where it came from. But I guess they decide they can stay. It's the quantum masks are like, hey, it's really bad if stuff from other universes are in this one. But they're like, you can stay. That'll be fine.
Yeah, I mean,
like
when we get the
I mean, that's kind of consistent too, because like every time like Spyro stuff loops over into Crash World, it's never good. Like stuff gets fucked, or they're like, oh, the Dragon Realms are touching the islands, and everything's going to shit. And fucking Ripto and Cortex shack up together, or the fucking synchronization celebration where like Cortex is able to use the weird vibrations to make a weapon, and fake Crash steals it for some reason. Yeah. It never goes good when the fucking dimensions touch. It's just not a good time. So they went home.
It's gonna happen again in Rumble. So
exactly, it's already happening in the comic. It's like Jesus Christ. And that's the thing. I didn't realize that comic is a meta joke. Like, not only is the line Ripto says at the end the line he says in Spyro 2 when he shows up, but it's a meta joke on two levels. The comic is the intro to Spyro 2. It's a smart person trying to open a portal, getting fucked over by a dumb person fucking it up, and accidentally summoning Ripto. Which is the exact thing that happens in Spyro 2.
Which I didn't even think about until you just said that. That's hilarious.
I saw it in a Reddit comment. I was like, if you've ever seen that GIF of Drake and Lil Yachty at the fucking computer where he's like, oh shit, yeah, I get it now. It's like exactly that. That was what I did when I'm gonna send you the GIF so that you know what I'm talking about. Just look at Discord real quick. Like, other people can look it up for themselves, but at least you'll know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Like that was me.
That's funny.
But the other meta thing is that, that line is from what he says in Spyro 2, but like it also ties into the fact that Ripto has been here before. So like, he's like, I've been to the Crash dimension before. Why don't I get to be part of this? Why don't?
Yeah.
So it's little layers, and then I'm sure opening an interdimensional portal accidentally through a Mojo relic station with bombs is going to go great for the stability of the universe. It's nothing bad will happen at all. I kind of feel like that's what's going to happen because hot take. I kind of have a theory that Ripto's going to show up, but Spyro's not. And it's like we're gonna get like some of the Ripto, like some of the Spyro stuff before we actually get Spyro. So like it would be kind of interesting if like in the comic Ripto and like maybe Alora somehow show up first, and like some Spyro stuff starts leaking through, and then season 3 is like the actual Spyro season where the castle shows up, or they could even do it as the mid-season update and do a comic where Spyro shows up mid-season. I kind of feel like there's something weird is going to happen where they like tie it into like doing a Spyro 25th anniversary story.
I think it could happen, from what I know as well.
I think they would be wise to try and get as much mileage out of the Spyro thing as they can.
Yeah. Because
I kind of get the feeling that if they're either working on a Spyro game or going to work on a Spyro game, that it's probably a ways off. So if you're going to do an anniversary thing, and you kind of have to do it like through another venue, making it at least the crossover and Rumble at least have like an actual story beat that happens in these comics is a good way to go about it, because it makes it a little bit bigger deal than Spyro just showing up in September and being like, it's been 25 years since Spyro 1. Here you go. All right. I think that's what they should do. I think it'd be a good, interesting way of going about things. I guess that transitions us into Rumble, because we're, But that was all the thing with alternate Tana or Tana versus Tana is just. It goes back to my point earlier. Like, a character not being around doesn't mean that they stopped existing or that they weren't doing stuff. It just means that we didn't see them in this story. And Kingdom Hearts is a good example. Yes, you can find ways to make every major character show up and have an arc, but you kind of need like a 60-hour RPG to do that. Crash games usually have about an 8-hour story if they're lucky.
Yeah.
So, and they're very cartoony in their storytelling. So, like, sometimes we're going to have to accept that, like, I'm trying to think of a character that's not going to offend anybody, but, like, sometimes we have to accept it when, like, yeah, Pasadena's not in this one, guys. Like, now, if down the line they do a mainline Crash game and there's a good storyline reason for Pasadena to have a lot of screen time, they should do it. Because it gets a lot of mileage out of the connected universe. But her not being in the games right now, like, well, to be fair, there are only 3 games that have story at the end of the timeline right now, that being being On the Run, the Grand Prix, and this, and she's in one of those, so I guess she does show up relatively often now. But, and she was in the survey for Rumble, so she may show up in Rumble, who knows?
Yeah.
But everybody and their fucking mom was in the Rumble survey. But my point is, like, it makes it more special for these characters to show up every once in a while if they're not all showing up all the time anyways.
Yeah.
And you have more options for telling stories when you don't have to fucking cram a dingo dial boss in there just to have him.
Mm-hmm.
So, But yeah, that rolls us into Rumble because we were talking about the comments and stuff.
Rumble.
So Rumble as a game, I like quite a bit. When I play it, I enjoy it a lot, especially if I'm playing it with like a lobby and not playing it with strangers.
Yeah.
When I play with strangers, I get my ass beat too much, and I get a little salty. I don't really get like mad, but damn, there are some types of players in this game, Cortex mains, just I was like, leave me the fuck alone, dude. When they did Zap Trap last weekend, I was playing it with a friend of mine, and we were getting upset because this person was like alternating between Cortex and Coco, and they were just impossible to overcome, no matter what you did. And I was just like, that's where my problems with Rumble lie right now, is I think some of the characters are just way too good at everything. Like, the boosters are... I haven't played Engine yet, so I don't know. But the other 2 boosters are too good at scoring and too good at blocking to just be boosters. So, like, it's aggravating that Cortex can, like, chase your ass down and slaughter you.
Yeah.
And, like, all of his moves are, like, quick fire. Like, the one that has cooldown doesn't take very long to cool down. Coco can put up that stupid wall that lingers for way too fucking long. Like, she can basically cheese gem platforms because she can jump on the gem platform, spawn a wall, and then stand inside it, and that gives her enough time to get the fucking platform, even if it's your color.
Yeah. Like,
there's just little things about the boosters that make it way too hard to deal with them if the person playing as them is good at the game. Whereas... all the other characters, I feel like there are ways around them with other characters. Cortex and Coco also somehow, other than one time where they, I think, reduced Cortex's damage a little bit, which didn't end up mattering in my eyes because his moves fire off like bang, 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 bang,
yeah,
bang.
He has no
So
cooldowns.
he could be doing 1 damage and he would still be able to melt you.
Yeah.
It seems like Cortex and Coco keep escaping nerfs and keep escaping the rebalances, and I'm like, it do be feeling kind of shitty that the characters everybody struggles with are the only ones that aren't getting touched.
I mean, here's the thing too. Okay, I'll say this as a Coco man, because I feel, and a lot of people are looking to me as they're pointing fingers at me as the guy who started the renaissance of Coco blockers. Only because one thing went within the Crash world, quote unquote, semi-viral, where I just went ham in one match and fucking won it for us barely, and because I was blocking, and so despite that, I still feel, because I was just playing some matches before this recording, where with Dave and Fez and the guys, where I still get my ass kicked as Coco by a wide variety of characters. It's not just, oh, I'm doing well all the time and getting top performer every single match. I died a fuck ton to this one Tana that was just relentless. I've died to a couple Cortexes here and there. I've died to some Brios. I definitely died to Ripperoos quite often. Engine is kind of getting up there a little bit, just barely being introduced right now at the time of this podcast. So, like, I still get bodied. It's not necessarily, for me, the way I see Coco, she's definitely one of the fastest characters. Just trying to get from point A to B. And I like that because I love using her momentum to just kind of dolphin my way around and kind of go and grab what I need to grab and then get the hell out of wherever I'm at. Where it comes to the combat, it doesn't really help too that, from my perspective, I don't think it's my internet connection, because I'm always plugged in with the Ethernet cable. I don't know if you've gotten this. I think Dave and them have gotten it a couple times, but not as bad as me, where you're in combat specifically, and the game will just fucking not have any of it, and it'll kind of lag you out a little bit. You'll kind of teleport around. Sometimes it'll teleport you to your death. I've had that plenty of times, and it gets hard for me to be able to do what I need to do if I'm trying to defend my own bank or go play blocker, because fuck it, why not? They're gonna cash in like 300 right now, you know, and like these little things happen, and I still feel that it's fair when someone's going up against a Coco, because it's just the same reason as if you're going up against someone who's really good as Tana or really good as Brio. Because once you learn the character, you start learning what you can and can't do with them. And that should hopefully encourage people to play everybody as equally as possible. Because if you're going through and leveling up one dude and then just... Because I say that, and I feel forced sometimes to play as Coco because of the fact that I have other characters on the roster that I don't play as often. I only have, I think, 3 or 4... I have 4 level 15s. It's Coco, Crash, Tana, and Catbat. Everyone else, some are closer than others. Some, like Cortex, I barely touched. I'm barely at level 3 with him. But when Toys for Bob go in and start balancing things, I realized that they just buffed Tana recently, so she deals more damage. Okay, well now that fucking hookshot is something to fear, because she'll stun you and just combo the fuck out of you. And I died to this one Tana today like fucking 5 times in a row. And it was relentless. I'm like, I can't even do my job. I can't even... And I wasn't even Coco. I was Brio. I was trying to block. And I don't know. They keep trying to like put some pips on of health and subtract pips and put your damage up by 12%, bring it down by 27%, and I think it's just all a learning process, but it's something to adapt to, I suppose.
I think my problem with Cortex and Coco is that none of the things that make them characters that are conducive to like try-hard, sweaty, fucking like overbearing players has anything to do with the numbers. So like they'll be like, oh, we took a pip off of Cortex and lowered his damage by 12%. Like, that's fine. The issue with him is that all of his moves knock back and have damage, and he can make you stop in place, and he can do all these things that it's not that he can do a big amount of damage. It's that everything he does stuns you and does damage and slows you down. And
it's like a chip. It's like chip, chip, chip. He'll just go. There's no cooldown.
Yeah, and with Coco, like, she has so much ability to defend and avoid your things, but her strongest damaging attack has a huge radius, and she can squash you without actually touching you, and you can.
It is hard though, to be fair.
And when you get hit with it, you can't. There's like fuck all you can do.
That's true.
So there's little nagging things with balance that I think have more to do with the moves than they have to do with the amount of damage that the moves are doing.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
that makes sense.
Like Cortex's transformation thing. It's way too easy for him to pop that off.
Oh, yes. It homes in on you too, because if you're like above him, as long as you see the reticle on you, he'll hit you with it. You can't avoid it.
Yeah, I think that should not track as strong as it does.
Yeah.
It should track some, otherwise it would be impossible to aim, but like it shouldn't fucking follow you.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of other little fucking problems I have with different characters.
I mean, my thing with Cortex is that a lot of those players, do get a little sweaty. They get relentless because they keep fucking following me, and I hate it. It's like, what did I, besides play the game, what did I do to you personally? Like, they'll, like, I even had a thing, I had a tweet, I posted a meme that even fucking Paul Yan saw and liked, where, it's the Bugs Bunny thing, the I wish, whatever. So I put I wish every Cortex main, a very happy, stop following me, dear God, stop following me. We stopped fighting over Jinbang B like 2 minutes ago. And that went, that got a lot of attention, and it's like, please, for the love of God, stop.
And that's kind of what I mean by, like, that character is conducive to that kind of behavior.
Uh-huh.
Cortex has the move kit that allows them to do that.
Yes.
Like, conversely, look at how often a cat bat, for instance, will just abandon a fight. Like, people who play as cat bat will, like, try to fight you if you come into their fucking space, but if you keep if you fucking run away, they're like, fuck it, cat bat's slow, and they like go do something else. Cortex, on the other hand, has no incentive to go do his role because he can keep up with you.
Yeah.
And so if somebody decides, I want that kill, because by the way, the game for whatever reason disproportionately counts kills in top performer. So even though kills mean nothing, if you get a lot of them, and don't do anything else, you get top performer.
They probably just want to see. They want to see their names. Probably what it is too.
Yeah. So Cortexes will, because they can, chase you down.
Yeah.
Because they're fast enough to do it. Another thing that I think needs a serious look or a fix is there is some exploit that lets Dingodiles fire off their tailspin rapid fire. Like you could, like being able to start a new one before they even finish the animation from the old one.
That's
not
weird.
not the charge one. I'm talking about like the regular one.
The regular one, yeah.
Where they can fire it off, and they're hitting you again before you're even back on the ground from the knockback the first time.
I have been, witnessing that. I've noticed that.
And, like, it's a clear bug. Like, it's clearly not meant to be how they play it. Because you can't, it doesn't happen on accident. So that's a problem. Tawna's hookshot still has a bug where every once in a while you go to shoot her hookshot, and instead of doing what it's supposed to do, it shoots it at the ground and throws her down. And if you're over a pool of water or lava, then God help you.
Yeah.
Catbat, I think, still has the bug where sometimes their double jump just starts pushing them down instead of up. But in terms of like actual balance issues, I think really it's just the ones I said. I think Brio needs some buffs.
They nerfed him quite a lot.
Like Brio, it takes too long to get into Brute. and then Brute isn't a big enough trade off of damage for how long it takes to get into it. And all of his other moves don't do knockback unless you perfectly nail somebody with a beaker throw.
Uh-huh.
So, like, if you're a blocker and you're on the bank blocking, and your Brute is on cooldown, there's nothing you can do as Brio close up to stop somebody from banking because you can't knock them into the air. His moves do not knock people back, so they don't come unglued from the bank. So no matter how much damage you do to them, they can bank. Unless you have Brute. And if you try to turn into Brute, what do? Knock you back. And skip the Brute. Which is the balance issue there is that everything knocks Brio out of his transformation. Everything. But his moves don't knock anybody out of banking.
Yeah.
So like there's very little incentive to play Brio on the bank because you can't do what you're supposed to do. So it's a struggle. Honestly, I think it should be easier for him to get into Brute. And his slap, if you hit like 2 or 3 of his slaps in a row, it should knock back. Because if I'm chasing a guy around the map, around the fucking perimeter of their bank, smacking them over and over and over and over and over, doing 80% of their health and damage over that time, they should not be allowed to bank because I'm actively hitting them.
Yeah.
Now, like I said, the gameplay itself I enjoy a lot, especially with a team. I like Zap Trap a lot, even though it's really stupid. I haven't played Engine yet, so I can't really speak to him. But like, most of the characters are some degree of fun. I really don't like playing Cortex. For whatever reason, I've tried. I just don't get it. I don't like it. He's probably the only one that I don't. Everyone else I'm okay with. Dingo Dial is kind of meh to me. But everybody else I like. Entropy is the only one I've got at level 15. Catbat is like literally 50 XP from going into level 14. And then I think Brio and Coco are probably next, and then everybody else is like at level 1 through 3. But as far as things that I hope improve in the game going forward with more seasons, I'm gathering that a lot of the stuff in the game now, as far as cosmetics, icons, banners, and stuff, are chiefly and largely there to save money because it's stuff they already made, and to kind of memorialize the earlier attempts at Rumble before it became the Rumble we know now. They've been making this thing for 5 years or whatever.
It's true.
So, like, I get that it's like getting your mileage out of the stuff that you made, but I really hope going forward, like, more of the icons are focused on like Crash fan service, and more of the skins are like Crash fan service. Like, Nitro Fueled really is like the standard bearer here. Like, don't get me wrong, I like stuff like Orc Tawna or whatever. You need stuff like that. But you also need stuff like, and they've already done this, so it's a bad example, but you need stuff like, the classic Tawna skin.
Yeah.
And you need stuff like
at least a little bit more
Crash you need, like, Crash should have Fake Crash and Evil Crash as skins, which one of those he already has in the data mine. I won't say which, just to be spoiler free. But like, there's only one backpack that's like kind of remotely Crash themed, and it's the Egyptian ones.
Yeah.
With the Cortex Sphinx. The banners are better about this, and obviously the music is.
Yeah.
I asked somebody at Radical not long ago, or they're not at Radical now, obviously, but they were at Radical during those games. I asked them, like, Activision should own all of your music, right? And they were like, yeah, we made it all in-house. So theoretically, they should be able to branch the music out to other games too, which they've already done. Technically, Thunderstruck is in there, even though technically it's not Thunderstruck from Nitro Kart, it's Thunderstruck from Nitro Fueled.
Mm-hmm.
But no. And they are using the Insane Trilogy versions of the Trilogy music. But they clearly own all of it because they used the original ones in
Crash
4.
Yeah.
So, like, get the On the Run music in there. Like, I don't know if there's, like, this stink on the Run where they don't want to, like, point to a failure. But, like, trust me, the fans don't think of it that way. They just like the music and they want it. So, like I said, the banners and the music are pretty good about being, like, Crash stuff. The packs and skins so far are not. The icons are not. Like, I like the art in them, but to be honest with you, like, I have pretty much every icon in the game, and I'm not really enticed to use any of them. Like, none of them are like, oh yeah, I want to use that one. I don't really care about having a slice of sentient pizza as my icon. Now, in Nitro Fueled, the sentient pizza was from a specific story thing, and it was tied into the story and part of the level. So having the stupid pizza sticker on my cart was funny. Yeah. But in that game, having a fucking slice of pizza on your cart or having a fucking number on your icon or whatever was supplementary. Like, the main unlockable content was, like, skins that were from other Crash games and carts from other Crash games and stuff that referenced Crash stuff.
Yeah.
So I hope they do more of that going forward. And I have kind of a bad feeling that they're going to start doing that with the Spyro season, which means we're going to have a Crash game that has a bunch of unlockables that aren't really Crash specific, and then a whole web of Spyro stuff, like Spyro related skins and stuff. And it's going to take us until season 3 to start getting, like, actual Crash stuff in the Crash game.
I mean, I do hope that they because they already are taking stuff like that into consideration. They haven't talked about more Crash specific stuff like that, but what they did do once, and I didn't get to see the results of it, but there was a poll they ran not too long ago where they asked, what kind of collectibles do you like unlocking? Whether it's skins, the emblems, the banners, the music. So I didn't get to see the results of that, but I think they're trying to take some of that stuff into consideration. And I do hope, that they do inject more crashiness into that stuff so it's worth even getting to begin with. Because I don't see a whole lot of people customizing in the same way that they would in Nitro Fueled. Because with Nitro Fueled, how you said too, with little pizza icons or whatever the stickers were, or whatever the decals were, you usually would do that for Nitro Fueled because everyone plays the same. So, like, it just comes down to, okay, let me just color code and just do my cart so it's very consistent looking. And that's, what made, for me anyway, and for I know Miharu and some others, the customizing in Nitro Fueled fun is that you got to color code, you got to do your cart up the way you, depending on whatever color palette your skin was for your character, or whatever the case may be, right? Versus here, where that shit doesn't really even matter to begin with. It's just more of expression because you're all fucking just ravenously like trying to destroy one another for Wumpa. So, at the very least, what you could at least have, if you're going to rep something, is to have, the crashiness or skins that are from other games, reflect other games. We're already getting stuff, from Crash 4 it's reused stuff and whatever, but I am thinking, hopefully, if they take that into consideration, then the next couple seasons will hopefully be a little bit better with that. I feel season 1 is the establishment / experimental phase of this game. Just try to find the footing, figure it out.
It's the proof of concept.
Yeah.
It's more, they got something done so they could get it out the door so they could get moving on more of it.
Yeah. That's what I feel.
Like I always tell people, I kind of feel like we're in like a paid early access more than we are like a full release.
Yeah.
like I think because season 2 seems to have a lot in it. Season 3 seems to have a lot in it.
Stuff
if
people
you
want,
go by how
specifically.
Seems to, based on how things are structured on the disc.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of feel like as the stuff pops off, I kind of have a working theory that like season 3 is about 6 months out from when it came out. Crash 4's PC version came out a few months after its console version. Same thing with Spyro Reignited. So I kind of have a working theory that like season 3 will launch with like the ports to Switch and PC, and they'll like cut the game's price, or they'll fucking switch to a monetized free to start kind of thing, and they're like figuring out what it's going to look like from here.
Mm-hmm.
I get the vibe that it's like a lot of people seem to think that it like fucking bombed off the map, and I kind of don't think it did.
No, I don't think I did either.
It has a pretty solid player base. Like, when they do stuff like Zap Trap or special modes, like you kind of see like you'll get teams of 3 versus 3 a lot with one bot each. But that I feel like that's because it splits people between the two modes, where people like, I don't really want to play Zap Trap because a lot of people don't like that mode. I do, but it seems to have a pretty solid player base. It charted physically in a lot of regions when it came out. It did not chart digitally, which is very strange for a game to do, by the way. For it, and that doesn't necessarily mean that it did worse digitally than it did physically. It just means that it could just mean that it still did well digitally. Everything else just did really, really well digitally, and Rumble did better physically than those games did physically. Like maybe the other games on the top 10, on the fucking top whatever, did 90% digital, 10% physical, and then Rumble did, fucking 60% physical, 40% digital. To where it didn't, it still did relatively well. It just didn't, because of the distribution, it didn't chart digitally. It'd be very weird for it to chart physically and not have done well. Now, it's a $30 or $40, really. 30. Let's just average it to 35. It's a $35 multiplayer-only game that needs a subscription. It's an unproven game that was like a completely out of left field thing. Like, it's an uphill battle, is my point. The Crash name carried it to probably doing okay. I feel like now that it's out there, now it's about a matter of like adding this content and fleshing it out, and then doing things like the free weekend, which they were bragging about a little bit on Twitter and stuff. So I feel like the free weekend must have done all right too. And kind of building up the game, and then I kind of feel like there's suddenly just going to be like, oh, by the way, boom, it's free from now on with monetized battle pass and monetized currency. And because I feel like the game launched paid not because they're like, oh, we don't want to do fucking paid battle pass or anything like that, so much as it's Crash Bandicoot. If they launch a cheap Crash Bandicoot game, even if it's multiplayer or whatever, it's going to make some money. And I think they have done that as kind of like a proving ground for the game itself. And now that they have a revenue stream where the game is being bought, and they've had like an infusion from it, they might be able to look at it and be like, okay, this could be something. If we market it and we get behind it as in a free-to-play format, it could actually do all right. So they could also do like a reduced entry, like if they did, like maybe it'll drop down to like fucking $10, or maybe it'll be fucking 15 or 20 or whatever. Point being, I think if it was gonna like burn out, I think it might have already done it, and it kind of hasn't.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of the opinion that it more or less, it must not have bombed, because I think, well, I'll reserve judgment until I see how they handle season 2. Like, if they put out season 2 and they put out they announce what season 3 is, like they kind of did with the first season, where they were like, season 1 is this, season 2 to come. If they say season 2 is this, season 3 to come, which is like a couple days from now, or like September. No, it's like another couple weeks. I, for some reason, thought it was later than this. But if they come out and they're like kind of cagey about season 3, then I might be worried. But up to now, I haven't really gotten any indication from them that they're like bummed out about it.
Yeah.
And Toys for Bob like consistently talks about like, you know, we're learning as we go. This is this will continue to evolve. And yada, yada.
They've been very transparent about it, which is good.
And I don't, God help me, I don't look in the fucking official server, but like it does continue to grow in users and stuff like that. So like, you know, that's a good sign. And I just the Reddit, it seems like the subreddit, people talking about the game has kind of like increased. People are more positive on it over time. People are still talking about it, and like it seems like it's still doing decent as far as like content performance for like people who make content on it. Mm-hmm. Like, he can correct me if I'm wrong, but like when I like go watch CGE's streams, his stream viewership seems to be consistent, and he's playing a lot of that. So, like, I think there's opportunity for them to grow it if they can, like... The problem with the game is I don't think that it's, like, the easiest thing to understand by watching. Even though it's... I say that, it's a very simple game. Like, collect points.
That's always been its thing. Ever since the first Game Awards trailer, people were like... I feel like people were cheering, but they didn't know why. Only because they saw it was Crash. But they were like, okay, well, is it a fighting game? Because you're beating people up. No? Okay, so is it a platform fighter? Is it like Smash Brothers? No? Okay, so you're collecting Wumpa. Alright. Is that it? Or like... And...
I mean, I've got ideas for how I would, like, market it.
Uh-huh.
But I think it's, like, if they do... let's say I'm right. Let's say, in 3 more months they're gonna launch the port and they're gonna make it way more accessible and they're gonna do a big second marketing push. They need to not be doing what they're doing now, where they're just kind of like, Toys for Bob tweets a video like, this is what's going on next, and then the Crash account retweets it, and that's it. Like, they need to be putting it in front of people. They need to be doing some of these fucking, like, sponsored streams. And you need to be finding ways to showcase the actual game, like, what's good about the game. Like, people who play it well, like us, should be the people playing it. It should be... I'm not saying, I'm not saying that they should sponsor people like us to play it. Like, they should obviously try to aim for, like, as wide an audience as they can, but the people playing it in front of these audiences should be people who know what they're doing.
Yeah.
You should be showing high level play, like show things like you see in reviews and the previews before it came out a lot. You see people like, oh, it's a hectic, great, good time, and it's a hoot and hollering this and that and that, but nobody shows like why it's that. The closest thing is when they do those character videos and they show like the move sets on Twitter in like the fucking vertical resolution or whatever.
Yeah.
They need to be doing more stuff where they're showing how the game actually plays and what you actually do in it. And they need to like sell it as this hectic sport kind of game.
I mean, because like the ironic thing about it is that the funny thing is that they're trying, in the sense that when you look at those trailers, they do say collect the Wampa, and they do show raw footage rather than just little pre-done things of characters being silly. They do try to show off the raw gameplay of what the goal is, and I think that just also comes with, which can be double-sided, having the one main central game mode. Because of course something like CTR markets itself immediately because A, it's something you already know that Crash has done before, but B, it is the exact same gameplay. It's racing. You don't do much outside of racing, so they can stack the other modes on top of that, and you can go like Ring Rally or whatever else, and you can go, all right, cool, that's just more shit for me to do in a racing context. But with something like this, which A, is unfamiliar to the Crash franchise because this has never been done before, and B, even outside of the fact of MOBAs or whatever else you want to call them, this is also pretty unique in its own right. So it's hard for Toys for Bob, who have almost essentially created their own subgenre, to be like, all right, how the fuck do we tell and show them this is what you do, and they feel it, because it's hard. It is hard to feel it. I think it was smart that, I'm not trying to toot anyone's horn here, definitely not my own. I think it was smart for Activision to invite people like me and CG out to Activision to get some of the first like raw footage, to then show to people, because our B-roll blew up for a while there. Because they've already watched us for a couple of years now, they kind of are like, all right, so now that a YouTube dude has played the game, what do they think about it? Because we're not going to bullshit. We're not going to do some, whatever, despite whatever people say, oh, fucking Mark and CG were paid off. No, we fucking weren't. For us to be able...
No, I know you weren't, because I've talked to him about how much it cost him to travel.
Oh, no, yeah. For him, he was jet-lagged as fuck, and he didn't want to do shit until he got there. And I paid out of pocket as well, of course, and I had help even to get the fucking ride over there. Not from Activision, from my family. So,
yeah, they were, as far as I know, they weren't even paying, like, the huge creators.
No.
Because I've talked to a lot of people, and so it's really funny. People are like, oh, they're paid off, and like when you're like, no, I didn't get any money for that. They're like, yeah, but you like Crash and you got to play it early, so of course you're gonna like it. I'm like, so you can't win.
I'm sorry that people watch me and appreciate what we do. That allowed us to have an audience that would then vouch for us being a cool person. That Activision will go, hey, and I guess that's a cool person.
I'm gonna be completely honest with you. It is wonderful to have some big fucking, like, Vine Sauce Vinny plays Anton Blast. Great. Fucking 8,000 people see it on that live stream. By and large, that does not convert to clicks as well as you would think.
Mm-hmm.
However, when somebody who is like a mid-sized creator who may only be pulling 1K per video goes out and plays Anton Blast, and say they're like, and this is a whole other conversation, but like say that they're like somebody who is known for Pizza Tower gameplay and other Wario kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Even though, I mean, I don't know how recently you've played our demo, but like it's not really very much like Pizza Tower at all.
I didn't play the recent
It's not.
No.
It's really not like Wario at all either.
That's insane.
There's more Crash DNA in it than anything at this point. But the point is, some smaller, mid-size, 1,000-view a video creator plays it, and it's in their wheelhouse. It does more for us, in my opinion. And we can fucking argue with investors and the other people at Summit all day about it. But my opinion is that it does better for us if we put it somewhere we know people are going to want to see it. So when they do a Crash game, it makes more sense for them to bring someone like you, who, and this is not to fucking minimize you at all, because you're obviously doing better than a lot of people in the content space. But like, you're obviously not fucking Kid Icarus, right?
No.
But I think it's better because that they put it in front of you and got your arguably smaller base.
Yeah.
They're going to get more mileage out of putting it in front of your audience that is knowingly positive on Crash and is going to be more receptive to it than putting it in front of even Caddy is a bad example because he's one of the Crash guys. Say they put it in front of like, I don't know, fucking. They would never do this, but let's say they fucking put it in front of fucking Critical or something, or like fucking like
someone who's not known for that.
Some standard dude bro fucking normie streamer, right? Like fucking enlightened centrist, both sides kind of streamer. You know what I'm talking about? Like the every streamer. Let's say they put it in front of one of those. Yeah, you're going to get 20,000 fucking concurrent viewers on Twitch, but none of them are going to go buy it. Yeah. And most of them are going to sit there in the fucking chat bitching about it. Because sponsored content just fucking gets shit on. I would rather have 1,000 small channels that like my kind of content play it than get fucking 100 of these big dudes. Because it's more direct and it like know your audience, right?
Yeah.
Toys for Bob is doing something new, both for Crash and just in general. Like, I know they don't like the word MOBA, and I hate the word MOBA because when I think of MOBA, I think of locked camera, mouse and keyboard, hotkey kind of game. I would call it character based. Like, it's character based objectives. It's SMAP, strategic multiplayer action platform.
SMAP,
or arena platformer, whatever. However you want to get to SMAP. Hi SMAP, if you're listening. But he's not listening. But I'll link him and make him listen.
To this specific part.
I'll timestamp. But they're doing something new. So when you're doing something new, it is going to be much easier to convince the audience for the brand that you already have than it is to convince general audience. Like, so them focusing up front on targeting Crash people, you, CGE, Miharu, she had gone. Sometimes they'll throw me a fucking bone. I'm not even a content creator. They just understand what my dynamic is with the fan base. Mm-hmm. I think I told you this in 2020 when we were talking about Spyro and stuff. I feel like they got kind of mad at me for a little bit there, but they eventually just suddenly started sending me stuff again. And they were like, I think it was because I complained. I was literally just one time I was just like, hey, look, you used to send me stuff. I am one of your biggest evangelists. If I did something to fucking get on your shit list, I have no intent of doing it again. And then they just kind of like never said anything about it. But then the next time they did a mailer, I got it. So I was like, cool. But like it's way more economic for them too to target smaller creators in a wide net, because you can either fucking spend $100,000 on 2 guys on Twitch that'll play the game for an hour and a half and their 5,000 viewers won't buy it, or you can spend that $100,000 on hundreds of smaller creators and get more out of it.
Yeah. They know Crash. I love Crash. That's kind of, they know what they're doing.
So it's going to be an easier sell to you to fucking explain, oh, this fucking Time Lord from another universe shoots lasers out of her fucking fork. And you fucking collect fruit and put out of boxes and put them in these big glass tubes. Because you're already going to be familiar with the characters and the worlds and the things like that. So it makes sense to target us first. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of what the difficulty is, though. It's new even for us. So, like, our hesitancy is easier to overcome, but it's still a hesitancy that they have to overcome, right?
Yeah.
So I think the problem with this game, the marketing problem with this game, is that I don't think it's not fun to watch. I think it's obviously fun to watch because, like, I mean, you've seen, and I mentioned CGE stream staying consistent earlier. Like, people who show up to watch Crash still like watching Rumble when it's what they're given. But I think it's not hard to understand. Like, it's obvious what the objective is when you're watching it.
Mm-hmm.
But it's hard to understand the fun of it when you're not steering the ship. And I think that's what the free weekend was a great boon for. Is that's the only way I think you're going to convince more people. I think they have probably got the base now. Like, Crash fans have signed up, by and large.
Mm-hmm.
With the beta, the launch, the free weekend, Crash fans are on board, I think. It's been a while since I've heard, who gives a fuck about a fucking Overwatch clone? I'm like, Jesus Christ. Like, you can tell at an immediate glance they don't know what the game is. They've never even looked at it.
Yeah.
They're like, I don't care about this Fortnite shit. I'm like, brother.
Because they heard
clearly.
online multiplayer. That's all they heard.
Yeah. But you don't really see that as much now.
No.
So I think the Crash fans are in. Now, to extend that out to like the casual Crash audience, which, by the way, is the biggest portion of the Crash audience, which is why I think people need to start. That's why another reason I go for the unified, cohesive universe theory so much is that we're reaching a point now where a lot of the people who grew up on Crash grew up with Wrath and grew up with Insanity.
Yeah.
And it's, you know what I mean? So, like, to them, those weren't the bad ones. Those were just the Crash games.
Yeah. They're childhood
So,
ones.
if you want that whole audience that's been there for Crash for 25, 27 years, you gotta have it all. You gotta lean into it.
Yeah.
So, but the biggest part of that casual audience is the people who played those games and played Crash Bash and played all this other stuff over the years and didn't really give a fuck like what form it took. They're just like, I like Crash. And those are the kind of people who are buying the most Crash games. That's why Insane Trilogy popped off and Nitro Fuel popped off, because it's just people remembering it and liking it and going, oh, I want to play it again. So to attract that audience, you're going to have to let them play this thing. So that's one of the biggest reasons I think it's eventually going to go free to play after we get through this growing pains period where they figure out the skins and they figure out the seasons and they figure out what they're doing. And Toys for Bob even said it. Like, after the beta, they said Season 1 and Season 2 are us figuring out what the fuck we're doing.
Yeah.
And that's why the first season is basically free. You pay for the game, but you get the season. Because they want to get that money in up front so they can have that revenue stream while they figure out what they're doing. But I think it'll go free to play eventually, or very cheap. Because you need to let people play this thing to understand what it is and why it's fun. And it is fun. And I despise that the reviews for the game were done on a fucking event. Because 80% of the reviews are people who played it for 2 hours. And then never touched it again. You can't understand Crash Team Rumble in fucking 2 days. Much less 2 hours. So, and to be honest with you, if you're reviewing, and I'm just going to say this flatly, if you are reviewing an ongoing service game, you need to evaluate it as an ongoing service.
Yeah.
You need to play it like an ongoing service. There shouldn't have been reviews filed for this game until Season 1 was done. Because you can't know what the pacing is for the fucking pass. You can't, like, you don't know.
Yeah.
You don't know what the rebalancing is. It's a live game. I don't give a fuck what a review on fucking pre-release code from a bunch of journalists who never played the game prior, playing with each other in a room in Santa Monica for 2 hours, have to say about the game. To be honest with you, the fact that the game had that obstacle to overcome and still has like a 67, 70 Metacritic shows you that it's not a bad game. Because if it was fucking dreadful, it would have dreadful reviews. But it didn't. And that's with all the qualms that you overcome by playing it for longer than 2 hours.
Yeah.
And somebody's going to come out and say, oh, the review event was 4 hours or whatever. It was 2 or 3 hours of fucking gameplay, and there was a Q&A. There was a big part of it that fucking wasn't even playing the game. So I don't want to hear that shit. But I think that was a fucking fumble. I don't like... And I think live ops game reviews should go back to the game every once in a while. Like,
yeah.
Fortnite's Metacritic like is entirely reviews from like 2019. And it was already a couple of years old at that point. I'm kind of like, shouldn't somebody like sit down with Fortnite and re-review it? Like, it's a completely different game than it was when I played it in 2019. I've only played it like a combined 15 times in my life, but even those 15 times, it was different in time 1 than it was in time 15, and I only played it for a couple of months. So like, when people review live ops games and they just put out a review and they're done, I'm like, that means nothing to me, and it has very little value. Especially analytical, critical value, and especially journalistic value. There's nothing that this helps me come to any conclusion on a game. So that said, I really think they need to get people in the game in their hands and let them play it for a long time. Because when I first started playing Rumble during the beta, I was like, oh no. And then an hour in, I was like, oh, okay. And then 2 or 3 hours in, I was like, oh, I'm starting to get it. But then I played it all weekend. And by the end of the weekend, I'm like, holy shit, this is good. And it's like if somebody put out a review of fucking God of War 2018, it was like 45 hours long for me. If they put out a review of God of War 2018 and admit in the review that their entire review was for this single-player, story-driven game with RPG progression, and they put out a review saying, we played it at an event for 2 hours, beat 1 level and a couple of bosses, 6 out of 10. They'd get reamed. And I would argue that that's something, like, I can more see the point of being able to say, well, I didn't like it, so why would I keep playing it in that? But a multiplayer game lives and dies by the changes that happen to it over time. And lives and dies by the player base and the meta and the strategies and the way people play and the balance. And those are all things that change over time. Like, I don't want to hear from people who haven't played a substantial amount of game on a game, right? Just in general. But for live ops, it's embarrassing that this game got reviewed the way it did. And to be clear, it's Activision's fault because they did it that way. But that's... And I'm not saying... Like, they just did what they usually do, I think. Because to them, I don't think the reviews for this really matter, because I think they were launching it knowing that it was smaller in scope. They probably didn't spend a shitload of money on it. I mean, it took 5 years. It cost some money. But I said earlier, it came out, and like you can tell that they're getting as much mileage as they can out of what they had.
Mm-hmm.
And now that they're getting revenue in, we might see more and more and more stuff happen. But I feel like they kind of knew going in that they were facing an uphill battle, and that's why the marketing was kind of skinned. Because they were trying to see if they could prove themselves with this game before they put the full machine behind it.
Uh-huh.
And that's what the full machine would be, is getting the game to as many people playable as possible, whether that's free or extremely cheap or a demo version. Hell, do free to start. Put out the free trial again and just leave it up. And if people want to play as the other characters and use the other powers and stuff, they do a one-time unlock fee. Like, and then monetize the battle pass and things like that. Like, there are ways to do it. The full machine would be getting some more ad money behind it. I think they probably didn't go as hard on the ads for it as they did on other Crash games.
Yeah.
And that's apparent because there have been like tweets that get like fucking 15,000 likes on it where people are like, did you guys know a Crash game came out? Because I didn't. and I'm like, but at the same time, I think their only real actual misstep is that review event, because I think that just set it up to get bad reviews, because the game is fun. And I think everybody who plays it for a length of time, usually the complaint, if there is one, is, I wish there were more modes or more cosmetics, but the actual game is fun to play. Mm-hmm. It might, like, sometimes you hear people say it gets repetitive, and I'm like, well, my brother in Christ, simply do not play 4 hours at once. Like that, but that's neither here nor there. I think it's pretty clear that most people jive with it when they get a chance to actually sit with it and let it and chew on it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look no further than the skeptics, the ones who were fans that looked at it and went, "What the hell is this?" And then yet still tried out the beta and went, "Okay, no, actually, no, I get it now. That's pretty good."
It's like I said, the actual Crash fan base kind of flipped. Now they're like pretty positive on it.
Yeah.
When before it was doom and gloom up in your room. Tee-hee. I think that the review event was the only misstep. I think everything else kind of indicates that they are easing into this.
Uh-huh.
And I think they'll do it over time when they have the stuff that everybody calls out. Like, oh, I wish there was more content. Like, to be honest, I think there's a lot of content because there's a lot of maps. There's a lot of characters, and they are all very different.
Yeah.
So it's only going to get more content filled. So, Season 3, Switch, PC, I don't know that for a fact. I think that's what they're going to do. If I find out for a fact that they're going to do that before they do it, I won't tell anybody, but I'll fucking feel more I'll feel more confident in this theory. They were kind of wink and nudging the Switch version at one point. Like, I think I think that's a given.
Uh-huh.
I don't know if I'm waffling on PC because I think it would be so easy to hack and cheat. And I guess it wouldn't matter if you fucking make PC players not in, like, if you can do like granular crossplay. Like, yeah, I want to crossplay with Switch and Xbox guys, but I don't want to be in the PC pool.
Uh-huh. Like,
that would probably help.
Yeah.
Because it's an Unreal Engine game, and Unreal Engine is like extremely easy to get into. Like to even just to hook into with like a tool. But Season 3, if they come out swinging with Switch, maybe PC, they have the party mode, the horde mode. They have, fucking Spyro, Ripto, Elora, Dilf Tropy. Koala Kong is probably in there. Because he's one of the patches on one of Catbat's skins that's coming up.
Yeah, I saw.
Like, you get more of these Crash characters. You get more of these Crash worlds. And Toys for Bob have already said, like, we want to start putting some original levels in. We want to start putting some places from other Crash games in. Like, we want to have more limited time modes. Like, they want to have that. They said the Toys for Bob Labs thing. And, like, if you've played any fucking multiplayer game ever that has a Labs mode, it's literally just dumb rules that they turn on and off and rotate. So, like, Zap Trap will probably just fall into that and be in there. They'll rotate between dumb modes. Like, oh, what if everybody could jump really high? Or something stupid. Or hell, like a mode where nobody can jump at all. Like, just dumb shit that, like, changes the game is probably what that mode will be.
What do you think of stuff like, have you thought of anything, especially if you took, I don't know, did you take the survey?
After the beta?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Was did you do anything like with them asking like, oh, what new shit would you like to see? Like, what new modes could you think of for this? Like, what would you want to see? Like, did you have any idea of something you want to see?
Most of the stuff I had was stuff that was like on their checklist,
Okay.
like capture the flag and
Yeah,
deathmatch and
yeah.
like obstacle course mode, like kind of like a Fall Guys mode or something.
Uh-huh.
And then to be honest with you, some of the stuff in their checklist is stuff that's like in the party mode stuff in the files. Like some of those modes are like in the party mode, apparently.
Mm.
Like capture the flag and stuff. Like Juggernaut is apparently in there. And again, data mines are data mines. Stuff could change. Stuff could be cut. This could be stuff left over from stuff they're not going to use anymore. So you never know. But like, I didn't really have too many brilliant ideas on new modes. I think they've already figured all those out because based on their checklist of stuff they that they had in there for you to choose from, I think it's pretty obvious where you take this. I would, like I said, have an obstacle course mode, maybe a single player variant of that too, where you go through the level and set like a time,
Mm-hmm.
or a points goal or something to have leaderboards. Basically, just throw shit at the wall and see what sticks. Honestly, and but to finish the point I was saying about the about season 3, if they do Switch and PC and they do all this and that, I think if people come into it new with all of that in there, like this party mode shit and the PvE mode that's kind of in there, and a bunch of Spyro stuff and a bunch of new characters, like a bunch of maps, because I think like even on the launch build, there's like a bunch of maps in the files, and like they all have names and descriptions, even though some of them don't have like actual like art on the disc. Like Waist Deep, I think one of the data mine dudes posted is like on the disc, like the name of it, but there's no like pictures of it or anything. But it's clearly pretty much done because they put out footage of it.
Yeah.
So like, I think they probably have a lot of maps to come. I think by New Year's there's gonna be a lot, like the people who are like there's not enough content are gonna just be wrong, for lack of a better way to put it. And I think when we reach that point, if they swap over to currency-driven free-to-play, and people come in and they put a lot of marketing push behind it, and I'm like, fucking put ads out, and like good ones, like and don't just put them on YouTube, like put them on TV and put them on live streamers and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And they did to some degree, but they didn't run them very long.
Yeah.
But I think those ads will carry a lot harder if the game is free to start. Like I said, I don't even think you necessarily need to do free to play. Just, you could do free to start. Make the free trial, stay in limitations. You can only start with the first couple of characters. You can play with everybody. You just can't use all the characters. You can't use all the powers. And maybe lock party mode and shit behind that. And then, people who like it. And don't even make it like here's the unlock key to unlock the thing.
Yeah.
Just make it, if you buy the battle pass once, you unlock full game. So if you don't have to buy the next battle pass, but you can play the next season free battle pass, but you keep the actual full game unlocked. That way you're driving people to buy your fucking battle pass. And you're driving people to your fucking cosmetics, and it's smart, right? It just makes don't layer up the fucking monetization so much that like you're splitting revenue.
Mm-hmm.
Battle Pass and a cosmetics store that lets you buy the stuff you've missed. Simple. Don't reinvent the fucking wheel. And I think Toys for Bob even said that in their post-beta thing. They said it verbatim. We're not going to reinvent the wheel if we do a store. And they're going to do a store. I mean, at this point, I think it's
pretty obvious.
Not because there's like stuff in the files, which there is, but because it's smart. And it's the best way to make the game take off.
Mm-hmm.
Is if it's... I mean, people want to hate microtransactions and want to hate battle passes and stuff, but if it's done well and it's not terribly exploitative, it's successful.
Yeah, it can help.
If you want the game to live, you're gonna have to compromise on it being a fucking $60 premium. Everything's unlocked from the Jump game. Like, I swear to God, we're going to reach a point where people are mad that they spend full price on a premium game that has all the content on the disc and have to unlock characters. It would be like... It's like, I paid $60 for this game. Why can't I play the last level first if I want to? Like, it's like we're going to get to a point where that's just true. And I mean, I feel like, because people, like, it's like the whole Baldur's Gate 3 thing. People make fun of, like, the idea that developers are scared that, you know, people are going to demand too much of them from games now that Baldur's Gate shows you can release a full game and have it content complete and all this and that. First of all, it was in early access for a while. If I remember correctly. If I'm wrong on that, I'll eat the crow. But it's also a company that's independent, not publicly traded, doesn't have shareholders to keel to, doesn't have all of this fucking growth chasing, yada, yada, yada. Yes, it's possible, but it is an anomaly. And it sucks that it's an anomaly. I'm not saying this is the way things should be. Fuck shareholders. I hate the way fucking stock market capitalism has done creative industries. But within the rules that we currently live in, a currency-driven, free-to-play version of free-to-start version of Crash Team Rumble, in my opinion, is the best way to handle Crash Team Rumble now. Because I think they've had their cake, now they need to eat it too. Because the cake being Crash fans are going to buy the Crash game, and Crash always does well, so if you put out a Crash game that costs money, they will buy it and you will make money. And it'll be a profitable venture. And I think they've done that part, and now if they want it to be a true game that lasts and goes into the future, they need to pivot to the people who aren't buying in just because it's Crash upfront.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the best way to do that is, like I said, free to start. Not free to play, free to start. Because I think that allows them to make the stuff that you're buying more valuable. If you're keeping it limited to what you're able to buy. Like, I don't think you should be like, don't ever complicate it. Don't have it so you buy every fucking piece of clothing individually. Just sell the currency and let the currency work in the game. And for God's sake, let us earn currency in the game too.
Yeah.
Because especially during these long ass seasons. But if they do it right, I think it's the best thing for the game, honestly. I typically don't... I'm a person who the FOMO shit doesn't work on me. So, like, they're like, oh, don't you want to get level 100 before the season ends? You want that trophy skin, don't you? I'm like, I don't care. The only time that he ever worked on me in Nitro Fueled was when the season complete bonus was Evil Crunch. Just because I'm a fucking Mind Over Mutant fanboy. But see, that's the thing. if these skins and stuff at the ends of the season were the fan service skins, they would make a lot of money on the battle pass. Because those are the ones that people are going to want.
Yeah.
Like, I don't give a... Like, yeah, Jester Trophy is cool and all, but I don't care enough about her to be like, yeah, I'm going to grind out the last week of the season because I'm not quite there yet.
Yeah.
Just to make sure I don't miss her. Especially because we all know the stuff that we missed is going back into the store later. You know it's gonna.
Yeah.
Because that's how every game ever works. So, like, it's going to be a little more of a stinger in Rumble because the seasons are long. So, like, if it's every other season, 2 seasons ago stuff goes into the store, if you miss something, you're waiting 3 months for it, at least. But, like, just the FOMO shit doesn't really work on me, is what I'm getting at. So, like, if I'm out here telling you, yeah, I think Battle Pass monetization is the way to go for this, free to start, not free to play, it's probably a good point. Because I usually just don't play that kind of game, period. But I can look at it and say I think it would engage that audience if it was allowed to. I would do another free weekend between now and then. I would lean maybe 1 a season until they eventually flip over. Maybe 2 a season. I don't know. But God's sake, please put the comics in the game.
Yeah. I remember you saying that.
That, like, that's maybe the biggest problem with the game is, like, the good marketing is locked on the Toys for Bob Twitter and the Toys for Bob blog. And I hate to say it, I love Toys for Bob. Anybody who's, like, on the fence about this game isn't going to toysforbob.com. And anybody who's going to be swayed by, like, the cool story stuff and the comics and stuff isn't going to toysforbob.com. And the people who play the game aren't necessarily seeing it. Like, I feel like a lot of the people who play the game aren't going in the official Discord server, and they're not going on the Crash Twitter. They're just playing the game. So I'd like to see some of that stuff in the game because it fleshes out the characters and it gives people more reasons to like them and more reason to want to max them out and get cosmetics and things like that. So I'd like to see that stuff in the game. And I know it's not easy. Like, you would think it would be easy to rig up a menu that lets you pan and zoom on a picture. It's not. It would take them some time to do, but I think they should do it because then once you have it, you can just dump the comic in there as soon as it's out. And I think those are good. If they get enough money coming in, I think they should bite the bullet and put voiced lines in. I know they gave their reason for why there currently aren't. And it's bizarre because I'm taking them at their word that they recorded lines fresh for this. Not recently. I think they recorded lines when they first were developing it. Because the credits have a larger cast than the game does. Like, some of the voice clips for certain characters seem to be repurposed clips from other characters, for one thing. So, like, I think they should give that a go. And if it really does get annoying, it's not that hard to rig up a thing in Unreal where the game knows what sounds are in which group and let us turn down dialogue if we want. Like, you could even granulize it and have a slider for spoken dialogue and grunts. Like, you could, like, so if you could leave up the fucking, like, oofs and ahs and yay, but turn down the fucking, like,
spoken dialogue.
Yeah, they are. Do they let you turn off the announcer right now?
I think so. I haven't messed with it.
So yeah, you could do that. Like, maybe I want the announcer on, but I don't want Cortex saying, "Ha ha, I kicked you in the nuts." like maybe it's just rig up sliders. If you really can't record a lot of lines, still give them to us, because the characters, I feel like, desperately need that characterization flesh out. So I hope if more money starts coming in, they're able to add stuff like that and kind of reinvest into things like that. I would like to see. We basically said all the stuff we'd like to see. I would hope that they don't bail on it. I don't think they will, at least not anytime soon.
I don't feel they will.
But I'm totally prepared for a reality where they do, if they can't, make it like a long-term revenue generator. But I think that all the tools are there to do it. The brand is definitely strong enough to do it.
No.
The gameplay itself is strong enough to do it. I think they just need to correct a few of the problems. And I think, to be honest with you, all the problems just stem from it being a smaller project that doesn't have a lot behind it up front, and trying to build up to being that dream game over time. And I hope they get the chance to do it.
It's a very... The word to describe the state of it right now is steady, I feel. I feel everything about it is steady. With the appropriate updates and with plenty of updates happening. Some I feel haven't really gone through yet that they said either we're supposed to or we're going to. They just haven't yet. But besides that, the game is steady. Characters are relatively steady. Besides, again, the stuff we've been talking about. But that, coupled with where they want to take it, coupled with how frequently they update and patch stuff and let us know what's going on, coupled with, with that, again, how transparent they're being when they make their little update videos and stuff. It feels very personal, almost YouTube-like, almost content creator-like in that sense, that they make update videos for us. Not only is it cool because, yes, the honesty is there, but also, like, there is no real reason to miss what's happening with the game unless you made that choice. That, okay, well, I haven't played it for like a couple months, what's happened to it or whatever. Which, it is, I would say, valid. I would say, like, I definitely have missed some stuff. I haven't gotten everything when, like, the first Zap Trap happened or KO Overflow. I think I missed entirely.
Yeah, I missed both of those.
But it's good to take breaks, and even how you're saying, when inevitably a store comes, and however they're gonna do it is how they do it. It's definitely a time will tell situation, I think. But with everything we have on it at this very moment, I don't think it's doomed to fail at all. Not anytime soon. I think they have a steady, again, there's that word, kind of idea of where things are going to go, what they're going to do, what they're being allowed to do, what Activision, I guess, is okaying and stuff.
I can tell you another thing I would do. Unreal has video. It can play video just straight. These videos they're putting out, like the little Zoom call playtest they did with Engine, and like the dev diaries and shit.
Yeah.
They should fucking, when they do these hotfix patches and shit.
Oh, I kind of bake them in.
Yeah, they should stick them on the menu in that little news icon.
That'd be cool. Yeah.
Even if they just wire in a wrapper that even if they don't do it in Engine, even if they wired in a wrapper that like pops the YouTube video on the screen. So that they don't have to like actually patch the game to show it to you. They basically, my point is, I think all the marketing they're doing around like this is what we're changing, this is what we're observing, this is what we're doing, is only getting to the people who are logging on to Twitter.
Yeah.
I think they should show it in game to the in-game audience. And again, this is not trivial to do. So like, I'm not like, oh, it would be easy to do this, why aren't they doing this? I'm just saying, like, if it were me long term, like if it were me working on it, I would be shooting for things like that.
Yeah, it's worth doing. Yeah.
put the marketing in the game because the game is already a platform for itself, especially if it ends up going free to play. Mm-hmm. I know I keep distincting between free to start and free to play, but you get what I mean by that at this point. Yeah. So free to play, free to start, whatever. Basically, they're doing a lot of good things that I think they just need to get more of a spotlight on. And I'll wrap up the Rumble suggestion/criticism tack by saying they probably have already thought of and are doing or workshopping most of the things I've suggested.
They very well could be. I do feel that it's not lost on them.
No. A lot of the things, if they don't do, are probably just resource availability. Or, we tried it and it didn't work. Mm-hmm. I think we're pretty good as far as my thoughts on Rumble. The one thing I do want to say is just broader Crash in general. Is if Crash fans want Crash to continue to be this billion-dollar brand, which it is, it has made a lot of money, a lot of units sold, a lot of merchandise. Still to this day, the merchandise is good for Activision and their licensees. If people want Crash to continue to be that and want it to be something that continues to be prevalent, then when Toys for Bob or Activision or any of Activision's partners come out with these new ideas, if we want Crash to be like Mario or Sonic, where they are putting money into it and keeping it rolling, even because Sonic is a huge brand, right? The games up until last year were not doing mega hit numbers. Sonic Mania did over 1 million units, and that was a big deal. Crash games, the last several Crash games, and even in the PS2 era where people were like, oh, Crash is dead. The lowest a Crash game did in the 2000s, and I'm not going to tell you who told me this, but it's somebody with intimate knowledge of back then, said Crash is consistent. Crash could do 2 million by fucking releasing a fart mixtape. So, that's the consistency. So, Sonic as a brand, game-wise, typically sells less than Crash. But they have so many more Sonic games coming out and Sonic things coming out than Crash games do. And that's twofold. Number one, Activision does not have the resources that people think it does. It's a giant company with a lot of employees and a lot of money, but Call of Duty is such a monolith, and Blizzard is such a monolith, that all of those resources go to those things. Crash is a huge brand, but it's not as huge as those two brands, and they don't have the people left over to touch it all the time. So when Toys for Bob comes up with a new idea like this, if we want Crash to be like Sonic, like Mario, and have games coming out, and have shows and comics and little things like the murder of Sonic the Hedgehog and little experimental things, we can't fucking turn up our nose when they do them.
Yeah. It's support. It comes back down to support.
You have to fucking, if you want it to grow, you have to let it do new things. And that's not to say, and Toys for Bob has drilled this into our heads the last couple of months, that does not mean that Activision can't go do single-player Crash, or that there will never be a core Crash game again. It just means that we're good to, that they can do other things too, and they're trying to grow it. And that's pretty much my last thought. Mm-hmm. Pretty much period. That I wanted to end on. Because, we need, as fans, to meet them in the middle.
Oh, for sure.
And, if we want Crash to be in that echelon, which monetarily and, game unit sales, it is. and merchandise sales it is,
Yeah.
then we need to meet them in the middle and help them do these new things with the brand and flesh it out.
For sure. It's support on both ends, and right now they are delivering. Like I was saying, about how transparent they've been. They are delivering with the fact that they hear us, they see us, and they want to please us. So in the way that we reciprocate by giving the feedback, by doing the reviews, or just the impressions, first impressions, whatever the case may be, just critiques and comments and stuff, people still are very cynical on it and all that. And it's something I was hoping would change because of the fact that we are. Because at first I just thought, okay, well, now we're in the back of like stuff that's inspired by Classic Crash. We're not in Titan stuff anymore, so hopefully that would calm them down. No, they found so much more to complain about. So like, I mean, what you were saying was basically echoing the end of one of the videos I'd made a while back, that was called Crash, Spyro, and Creative Freedom, where I was like, even for both of them, because Spyro has some of that as well, but for Crash, it's like, yeah, at what point, like, how much creative freedom should the devs have? And of course, the point I'm going to come to is, well, as much as they want, because at the end of the day, it's them making the games, and they are also fans of Crash who want to do their own things with him because it can make a fun game for everyone. And with the fact that they're being as experimental right now as they are, and thankfully we're back in that space where we can have all this shit to meddle with, of course there is no real clear-cut path. It seems like we've been saying they're making a path right now with Rumble, with where they want to take it, but there's so much you can do. It's a matter of weeding it out. Maybe not everything will stick. I mean, who knows? You never know. No. But it's a learning process. Yeah, exactly. But it's a learning process, for sure.
Yeah. And just to put a bow on that, and to put a bow on probably the conversation entirely, because we're about to hit 3 hours.
3 hours, baby!
But that's why it's a good thing that, and people can argue with me if they want, it's a good thing that Crash 4 and Crash Team Rumble did not end up kowtowing to Crash traditionalists or Crash trilogy absolutists.
Yeah.
Because you end up railroading yourself. You end up not, like, if you railroad yourself, that is all Crash will ever be. Is every fucking 6 years we will get one core game, and that's it. And there are people who only play the core Mario games or only play the core Sonic games, and great for those people. But most Sonic fans, most Mario fans, they like a little bit of Mario Party. They want a little bit of Sonic Mania. They want a little bit of fucking murder of Sonic the Hedgehog. They want a little bit of fucking Mario Kart. We're not like. So I would like Crash to be able to do that and not have people fucking flip their lid and be like, "This isn't the trilogy."
Yeah.
And that's that.
Yeah. That's just all we've been advocating for. Those of us who know and love the whole franchise, not any one era, any one developer as their absolute favorite. You can have a favorite, sure, but don't act like if it's not them, then it's trash. If it's not Naughty Dog, it's garbage. If it's not... Because there are still people like that. And it's like, bro, they have not touched Crash in fucking 20 years. Get over it. Seriously. Like, it's astounding the type of people you'll find, even nowadays, that still just have those opinions and just they rub me the wrong way. I don't want to end it on a bad note or a negative note, but like,
I mean,
okay.
Turn the phrase to there's a positive outlook. Activision is confident enough in Crash Bandicoot that they're willing to follow up a core game with a weird fucking experiment.
Yeah.
Like, the brand seems safe.
Yeah.
So we should be embracing these kinds of oddities and forward motion because it means that the brand will grow and we'll get more of... If this isn't your kind of Crash, this being able to exist is fuel and a route to being able to get as much of that core that you want in the future as possible. Because it means that there's more streams of revenue, more resources, more time, and if they're willing to do stuff like this, then they've got a good outlook for it in general. So there's a positivity to it, even if it's not your thing.
I guess the last question then is, I mean, are you cautiously optimistic about the future? For
the cautiousness comes in for like Rumble. I'm cautiously optimistic about Rumble because I think the tools and the ingredients are there to make it something. Like if Toys for Bob, I think I mentioned earlier, Toys for Bob have said season 1 and 2 are kind of like our growing pains. We're figuring it out. Season 3 is where we're going to like really try to pop off. So I kind of have a feeling that's going to be like when Nintendo Switch comes into play, and you might see the PC version if they're doing one. And I think you'll have a lot more game modes by then. You'll have a lot more heroes by then. You'll have a lot more maps by then.
Yeah.
I think that's probably when they'll do this free-to-start Switch that I'm theorizing they'll do. So I think that there's a lot of stuff in motion that can get them there, and I think Rumble can be a big force for Crash. And for them in general. And I think if the Microsoft Activision acquisition comes through anytime soon, which October-ish is my estimation based on all the stuff that I've been following. And I mean, kind of has to be because that's the deadline for like everything. But if that comes through, I could see them doing Game Pass. I could see, there's a lot of ways to increase the player base, even if they don't go free to start or free to play soon. But like I said, the game itself, I think, is great. And I think as it gets more content, it's going to be a way easier sell, especially if they market it. Like they kind of have not super been doing up till now, but I think we're kind of like in a soft launch, and we'll see it ramp up when the content does. For Crash himself, like the whole brand, I'm just regular optimistic. There's no caution about it. Again, especially if the Microsoft deal goes through, because they very clearly enjoy Crash over there, and they've made it clear that like Rumble does not preclude us from doing regular Crash games and other Crash games. We just want to see Crash games be able to do more things, which I like, as I've rambled on this podcast 500 times now. I promise I'm going to wrap up, but there is one other thing I wanted to say.
Yeah.
The 25th anniversary of Spyro is coming up, and they're allegedly doing Spyro and some other Spyro characters and a Spyro map and some other Spyro-themed stuff in Crash Team Rumble, allegedly. So the Spyro Community Day is coming up soon, and you can take this however you want to take it. My suggestion is that if Spyro fans want Spyro to, have his own adventures again and use Crash Team Rumble as a springboard to get more Spyro content, now is the time to speak up and be as loud as possible, because on the anniversary and while releasing Spyro content, they're already going to be paying attention. So a community day being loud and obnoxious and popping off as hard as it possibly can is the best way to tell them that you actually want them to make more Spyro stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, Spyro Community Day next week or the week after. It's like a third of the way through September. I can't remember right now. I'm sorry, but be very loud. And don't do that thing that people did last year or whatever it was, where they had like the infighting, where they were like, why do we have to do your Spyro Community Day? I want to do my Spyro Community Day, or whatever. Like, no, just gang together and yell about Spyro for 24 hours. Now's the time.
Yes.
It's a good idea. They're going to be listening because they're doing Spyro stuff.
Yes.
And that's pretty much all I wanted to say. Because, believe it or not, as big a Crash fan as I am, I'm also a pretty big Spyro fan. Not as big. Like, I'm not, like... There's a lot more Spyro content that I don't like. Conversely to Crash content that I don't like. But, like, when Spyro is at its peak, it is its peak, right? So, As much as it may not seem like it, Spyro is a very big, important thing to me. And if there's an opportunity to have Crash and Spyro both continue, that's my ideal world. So, Spyro Community Day. Scream your ass off.
Yes.
That's all I got, man.
Nice. All right. I believe after cutting and doing and stuff and doing chopping and whatever, I think we hit the 3 hour mark.
Yeah,
So
probably.
Yee! If so, cool. Check the time. Check the timestamp.
3 hours on the mark. So this should be a lot cleaner and a lot less needing to cause any trouble. And it's more relevant because we recorded it at a good point, a good stopping point in Crash Team Rumble season, and I feel like we had a lot more to talk about as far as Rumble this time.
Yeah.
I'll just speed this up and we'll wrap up. Here's my plugs.
Plug time.
I doubt this gets out in time, but if it somehow miraculously did, or even if it's during, Summit Sphere will be at PAX West. If anybody's at PAX West, come see us at the Anton Blast booth. You'll know us from our giant neon sign and our bar aesthetic.
Cool.
Can't wait for people to see that booth. We will have merchandise giveaways, a wheel to spin. You can feel like you're on Price is Right, but like a shitty, seedy Price is Right. We'll have merchandise giveaways. We'll have an updated demo. It is even more updated than the Dynamite demo on Steam. It is brand new, even though the levels are the ones we've been showing for a while now.
Cool.
There may be some surprises in the demo. Follow Summit Sphere on every social media known to man. I'm also on every social media known to man. At JumpButton CD. And like I said, Spyro Community Day. I think September 8th, somewhere around there. I don't know. But pop off. Yeah, early to mid-September, and make sure you pop off for that.
Cool.
That's all I got.
All right, man. Thanks so much for coming back onto the Bandicast. Always fun hearing your opinions and stories, and it's fun talking to you.
Yep. Cool.
Until next time, I'm Mark.
I'm me.
I'll see you guys later. Thanks for listening to the Bandicast, and take care.
Oh.